basically an alternate way to resolve disputes. So instead of going to court and suing people, I or anyone else who is a mediator is a third party neutral.
Okay, we're back. Sorry.
That means that we are not advocating for one side or the other, but we help you resolve the problem by talking directly to the other side. And we make sure that it's a safe space. We make sure that everyone listens. We make sure that people hear you. And then we help you get to a resolution. So I'll talk a little bit more about that a little later today, but thank you very much for being here this morning.
Okay, so next up, in terms of
Okay, so once again, if you are watching, I'm going to be live all day. This is going to be a 5-hour event. This is for Victor Perez, and it is the it's called the Truth and Reconciliation Conference.
Hi, everyone. Good
for
morning.
Pocatello.
My name is Kyla. I'm the Family Constellations Facilitator.
Pocatello, Idaho. So if you're here for the long haul, cool.
My dad's name
If
is
you're just
Victor.
gonna jump in,
He
check
is
in
Japanese
here
American,
and there,
and
appreciate it.
he
I'm
and
live
my grandparents were
live on
interned
Twitch
just for being Japanese
and
American
on
during World War II.
YouTube at Brutally Human
I'm a healer,
Uncovered.
and I'm a first-generation healer in my
So let's
family.
listen in.
What is Family Constellations? You may be asking. It is a group transformative healing method that acknowledges very, 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 very deep trauma that many of you have talked about, that many of you need acknowledgement about. And I will be there with the Kleenex box. Thank you very much, all of you, for sharing your stories. Family Constellations came out of the Zulu tribe work, and in the Zulu language, their greeting is, I see you. I see all of you.
We want to make sure that especially the speakers, the intro speakers, that you join with Miss Mitsunaga afterwards. I mean, because there's been some very poignant introductions. I mean, how can you get through this without without a tear? I want to find out if Thomas, if he wants to say a few words. You care to say a few words now? Yeah, just give it like a minute before we get to Mr. Burrs. Okay.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for being here, and I want to thank James Cook and Mr. John Burris and the other members of his firm for the invitation. My name is Tom Katzlamides. I am a Pocatello native, graduated from Pokie High, attended ISU for 2 semesters, and went on somewhere else to get my graduate education. My family has been in Pocatello literally since the 1800s. My grandfather came over in 1904 with one brother. They already had another brother here since the 1800s. I have deep roots here. I visit my mom often. She's 94 years old. And I was in town that day, that fateful day, April 5th, to visit my mom when this event happened. I happened to also talk to a mayoral candidate who is a challenger who's coming up, who used to be on the Pocatello Police Department. And we have shared our stories and experiences about how awful things have become. And it has gotten to the point, I am an attorney. I usually work in a civil practice in transactional matters. And years ago, I ran into a gentleman who's in this room today. This was over in the Treasure Valley, and he received one of the worst beatdowns from law enforcement that you could imagine. Nearly took his life. And he's here today, and I introduced him to James. And we're not done with what happened with him. But he prevailed in a civil lawsuit. He got a settlement, okay? It's not enough. It hasn't curbed the behavior of what has happened and the training and the lack of training. And the worst thing about it, and you'll probably get this later on from the education part of it, It's the deadly force policies that have escalated in this country, all across this country, that have allowed things to happen where law enforcement goes so far overboard, just like
Once again, if you're
lovely
watching,
lady
thank you so
mentioned,
much for
you
tuning in.
used to
I
be told
appreciate it. I
when
don't
you
know
were
why
raised to
there is
trust the cops, go to the cops. We can't do that anymore.
such
We can't.
feedback.
We can't. We need to clean it up. And
But
in fact,
we
before I reached out to James, when I first heard this was happening in
We
Pocatello,
are
it was a couple
here
days later
at
that I heard
the
about
Truth
it, and I
and
was here that
Reconciliation
day.
Conference.
I
I
go to
was
see a
invited
colleague
by
in
the
Boise.
legal
He
team
represents a
for.
lot of law enforcement
I was invited
officers
by the
when they're
legal
sued
team
civil rights
for
lawsuits
Victor
and so
Perez's
forth
family.
with deadly
So we're
force
going to be
cases.
here
First thing he
live
says to
streaming
me,
it
I told
all
him,
day. It's supposed to
I'll
be
leave out
5
his
hours
name.
from
I
12 to
said, "You're gonna
5
be getting a call
Eastern Standard Time.
Pocatello,
Here we
maybe
go.
a couple of calls." He says, he instantly knew what I was talking about. He says, "I'm not going to take any of them unless it's from the family." He says, "I'm representing the family on this one. It is so bad." So I'm glad James is here. I'm glad Mr. Burris and Mr. Nisbaum are part of this case. It needs to be cleaned up. Thank you.
Man, awesome.
I want to give, before we go to Mr. Burris, just give one more person a chance to speak. We got another person that came up, took a long drive. I want to just give 90 seconds to say what you're going to say. 90 seconds here. I'm cool with that, or you want to play? I feel great. Okay, no problem. Okay. All right, well, then let's, I mean, you guys drove all that way, so I just wanted to make sure. Yeah, please come on up. Yeah. Okay. Okay.
All right, we're about to, I believe right after this person speaking, we're about to hear from the head of the law firm, John Burris.
And we have lived there for over 40 years, and we have had nothing but trouble from the Fremont County Law Department. Also the fact that, like so many of us know, a lot of these officers, it doesn't make any difference if they're in Pocatello, Boise, or Island Park. Some of these officers are unqualified to do their job. They pick one individual out during their lifespan as law enforcement and harass. And this is why we need to do something about getting qualified personnel into the law enforcement throughout the state. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so now we'll move on. We'll start the portion with Mr. Burris, John Burris, and Raven Robinson. I've made you the host, and you know you might want to put it on speaker view, and you can share your screen. And just a quick introduction. So I always try to tell a funny story. When I was still in law school, you know, I was looking for an internship, and for a lot of people that don't know me, my career before this is I was. If you ever seen UFC or, you know, K1, I used to do that kind of competition. So I was anyway. So Mr. Burris was in the middle of the riders, and big case in the Bay Area, right, where he made some reforms, and he's going to talk a little bit more about it. But it's a case where it put the department in receivership. They got a federal monitor, that type of thing, and he was in the middle of this particular case, and here I am, just some, guy from Minneapolis, transplanted to San Francisco, trying to get an internship with him. I'd call every day, all the time, and I couldn't get a hold of him. Ben Niesenbaum had just become an attorney at that time, and he was actually answering the phones. He said, "Hey, look, man, you just gotta keep calling him, or I mean, I hope you got something about you that can make him pick up the phone." I was fighting at the Oakland Coliseum, which is right across the freeway from the Burris office, actually Oscar De La Hoya, if you guys remember him, boxing show. Called Mr. Burris. Hey, I'm going to be fighting at the Oakland Coliseum. I'll leave you a ticket. Next thing I know, he called me back. I met with him, and if you don't know Mr. Burris, he's a very funny guy as well. And he's like, "Yeah, a law student doing this boxing, that's really odd. You're odd, but it's true." So I always tell that story, but you know, it's I'm always glad that he gave me an opportunity, gave me a chance, especially to be involved. You know, now, you know, I basically grew up in the firm, and now I'm involved in cases like this. So you know, it's and you know, I've been in it for the long haul, and you got to know he is really committed to this work, and now we're starting to go to other states. So please welcome Mr. Burris, and he'll teach you about police misconduct. Thank you. I think you need speaker view so he can also be seen, Raven. Because right now we're only seeing you.
Okay, so we're about to hear from
Is
John.
he here? I thought I put it on speaker view. Is Mr. Burris here?
We're about to hear from
so.
John Burris, one of
I mean, he
the
was.
heads of the legal team for
Okay, just a sec.
the Perez family.
Did we lose him?
It appears they're having some technical difficulties. I'll take this time to say, if you would like to support One Love Studios, you can text
There he is.
53555.
Raven on the hand?
Yeah, I'm gonna restart the share right
You
now.
can text.
Okay, there you are.
I don't even know what the hell I'm saying. Yeah.
Can you see my screen okay?
I can. Yes. Thank you.
You can proceed, Mr. Burris.
Here we go.
Can't hear you.
You can proceed, but you probably have to unmute yourself. All right, go ahead.
I'll also try to regulate the
Can you hear me?
the sound as it comes in, because it
Yes, we can hear you. We hear you very loud and clear here.
Are we starting?
And you can start. Yes, sir.
Okay. Well, good morning, everyone. Thanks for coming out this morning. This is an important time to get some appreciation for the various laws that not only apply to case here with young Perez, but generally to all of you as you go about your daily lives and have contact with the police, willingly or not. You do have certain rights, and we have been involved in protecting citizens' rights through most of my career. So this is kind of know your rights seminar, if you will. And it's labeled, I see, Truth and Reconciliation Conferences. And I understand that there's going to be a number of other lawyers who will be talking, or other people will be talking. But let me just start off. Go to the next page here, Raven. And this is a table of contents that we will cover here today. And the first slide will be Know Your Rights in Police Encounters. I'll go through that. Then we will have some discussion about cases that I think are appropriate, that are applicable to some of the kinds of issues that I'll bring up initially. Then the third slide will be about change, and that is some of the things that can be done in mentally impaired cases. And then I'll open it up to questions after that. So let's get started here. Like slide number one, it goes to, this is just a picture of a press conference that my office was involved in. That's me and Ben Nessenbaum, who you heard the other day, in a case that we had in California where a young man had been shot and killed by the police. Go to number 2 is more substantive. Raven, number 2 slide. And this really, we need, I hope that you can see it, but I think this is the nuts and bolts of what happens to people on a daily basis. And the kind of communications I'm having here is what I generally tell everyone. Important to tell young people because these are the ones who are very, very vulnerable when they are stopped by the police, but it applies to everyone. So first thing I'll tell you, if you're stopped by the police in your car, the thing you want to do is kind of remain calm and beyond everything else respectful. You don't know who you're dealing with. You don't know what the temperament of the police officer is, and you don't really know how they're going to respond to an attitude, if you will. It is true you have rights, but if you seek to enforce those rights by telling the officer that you have rights, you can. Some officers will not respond very kindly to you. You have the right certainly to ask if you are free to go. And this is an important concept because if you are being detained in your car and you have not committed any crime, then the question is whether or not, I should say you're detained on the street and you've been stopped and there's no probable cause or even reasonable suspicion to justify the continuation of the stop. You are in a position to say to the officer, am I free to leave? And if you're not free to leave, he should tell you, or he or she should tell you, that you're not free to leave because that for whatever reasons. It may be there's a robbery taking place, a purse snatching taking place, and he has a right to further investigate that. If you are held for a period of time that's kind of unreasonable, then that raises questions about the rights that you may have that flow from it. But it's very, very important that you decide whether or not you want to respond to a request to search you on the scene. You do not have to submit to a search. If you're stopped on the scene, the police are entitled what they call a Terry search. That is, to pat you down on the outside of your clothing to determine whether or not you have a weapon of some kind. Then they have a right to do that. But the stop cannot pertain for an extensive period of time. For example, they can't stop you with no basis and they think that they have something and hold you for 2 hours without any basis to do that. If they do that, then that becomes an arrest. If you've been become an arrest, it has to be probable cause to believe you committed a crime. There are 2 different concepts here that you have to keep in mind. Reasonable suspicion is one that serves as a basis to conduct the stop. Reasonable suspicion may be that someone is called in, that there was a suspect of a robbery and that person meets your particular description as you're walking down the street. Or there's a robbery of some kind and 3 or 4 young people involved. Then the question is, do they meet the description? But it is an important concept to understand that they do have a right, if they have reasonable suspicion, that is some basis to stop you, that they can ask questions of you. You do not have to respond to any questions. The only thing I would say is probably wise to give your name and ID if that's requested. But questions about any particular crime, any questions about where you've been, where you're going, you don't have to answer those questions. And they must then release you or arrest you if they have probable cause to justify the arrest. The next area that is also equally important is called vehicle stops. Now, this is common. People are stopped all the time in their cars for various kind of traffic offenses. These offenses sometimes for minor offenses, or whatever they are, whether it's tail light out or it's registration not appearing in the proper place or tinted windows, they can in fact justify the stop. And once you're stopped, you have a requirement to give up your driver's license and your registration. One of the things you do not have an obligation to do is to consent to a search of your car. If the officer asks you for permission to search your car, you should say no. If he continues and he persists and he says he's going to do it anyway, do not interfere with that, but make sure that you, in fact, record his name and write down as much information as you can. The other thing, if you're in your car and the police stop you, particularly at no point in time should you do anything that creates suspicion with your hands, because people are often shot and killed in their cars when they make some quote gesture, furtive gesture, they call it. That is to say, you go into your glove compartment, or you reach under your seat to get your driver's license, or you reach somewhere to get any other personal items. You do not do that unless you make an announcement. And please, Mr. Officer, my driver's license is in my glove compartment, or it's in my wallet in the back seat, or it's in the glove compartment, or it's in the trunk. You should announce those things. If you do not, officers can be very suspicious of you, and particularly if they have reason to believe it's a high crime situation in a neighborhood, or they're looking for somebody, or not, or just routine stops, because most of the stops that occur are routine. There's always a question whether there's a basis for the stop, but they are routine, and it's up to you to make sure you keep yourself safe by making sure your hands are always visible. This is particularly true at night. It's also particularly true of young people. If you, in fact, have a weapon in the car that should not be there, you should not try to discard that weapon while the police officer is there. It may be the officer doesn't have a basis upon which to search in your car. And the smell of marijuana in itself could justify a search, but you do not have to consent to a search. Most people will consent, but they should not consent, because the officer is looking to find whatever they can, and you may very well have something in your car that you forgot that you had, or someone else has put something in your car that you're unaware of. So you do not consent unless you have to consent, unless the officer decides to do it without your consent. But in any event, you should take down the proper information. This is a very important situation here when vehicle stops, making sure you do not make any movements that will cause an officer to feel concerned about their safety. Some officers will have attitudes about it. You should try to, your own mind, de-escalate that situation. Yes, sir, no, sir, things like that. Those are not recapitulating in any way, but it's also a safety mechanism, because you do not have what they have. They have guns, and they can react in a nanosecond in a way that's contrary to your own safety if they perceive that you said or did something that was not projecting a safety for them. So vehicle stops are very, very important. Okay, the next one, and I'll get to the legal rights here involved, but the next one is home encounters. This is a police officer comes to your home. He comes to your house and he says, I want to search, I'm looking for Johnny Jones and I want to search your house. Well, he cannot search you out and should not be able to search your house without a search warrant. A search warrant should, in fact, have clear information on it, recognizing who they're trying to search and why they're trying to search it. Now, this is an important thing, because if you have kids at your house and you are not there and a party's going on, then they can do a safety check for all those kids in the house, and they can all be taken down to security, to juvenile facility for protection. So if you're having a party at your house, an adult has to, and should be present at all times. You're also responsible if you're having a party at your house and alcohol is consumed and drugs are consumed, and any one of those kids go out and commit a crime while they're under the influence of the alcohol or drugs, you may have some liability. So I would just warn you that if you're going to have a party at your house with teenagers, you make sure that alcohol and drugs are not something that's readily available to them, and that the party ends at a reasonable period of time. Now, a valid warrant is issued, of course, by a judge. The police officer has gone to a judge and says, look, I want to search house A, and I want to search house A because I know that there are drugs in that house based upon an informant, a confidential informant who was there last week. And he was there last week. He saw that resident A had some illegal drugs, cocaine, heroin, and things of that nature, methamphetamine, and that serves as a basis for the warrant. Now, that warrant may be defective because it might have old information in it. or it may have described the wrong house or the wrong information. But I can only say if the officer shows up with a warrant, you should not try and stop them from doing what they're doing. They are supposed to give you a list of everything they have taken when they leave. And that's very, very important. Just to let you know, now there can be circumstances where no warrant is required. If a person living at the house is on parole or probation, they may have a search clause, meaning they can be searched at any point in time, and they can come to their house and search that house. Now, when they come to your house to search, they can only supposedly search the room of the person who is the subject of the parole search. But if they're coming in the house and a person on parole lives in the back room, on their way to the back room, if they see any activity that's illegal, whether it's drugs or guns, etc., that then can serve as a basis for an arrest for the person who owns the facility. So the best thing to do, if someone is staying at your house who is a son, daughter, husband, wife that's on probation or parole, you need to know that the house can be searched at any point in time, and you should always make sure that you do not have items that are in plain view. That is to say, person comes in, he walks down the hallway, he can look to the right, look to the right, to the left, and he can see drugs, or they can see a gun, and they can determine whether that gun is not stolen or not. So it's important that in your house itself, that if someone is staying at your house is on probation or parole, that you in fact really make sure that their living accommodations is such that you do not expose yourself by things that are left around that are contraband, that are illegal. The other way that a person comes to your house is what they call exigent circumstances. That is to say that the police officer in hot pursuit of a person, and that person runs through your house and runs through and runs out the back door or even hides in the house. Well, the officer who's in hot pursuit can, in fact, come into your house without a warrant and look for that person in the house, or if that person has left, to go pursue. They don't have a right to search every another room. They have to have some reasonable basis for those places to look. But if they're in hot pursuit, the court gives them greater protections when they come into a person's house without a warrant. If, in fact, the person hot pursuit means they're in a chase, they're trying to catch this person, and that person is trying to get away. And by getting away, they run into your house. And when they run into your house, the police can come into your house right away, assuming that there is there's no other basis for them to come in. The other thing I would say to you in home encounters, when there's a domestic violence situation in play, the police officer does have a right to come to the house and enter the house, even if you say no, for a safety check. If the spouse, one of the spouses, children calls the house and says that they're physically being abused, then the police have a right to come to do a safety check. And they can come into your house and do that. And chances are, if there's a physical abusive situation, one way or the other, somebody is going to jail. And so you got to know that, which means then you have to accept the notion if you call the police on your spouse and there's physical abuse involved, that spouse is going to jail. You're going to go to jail for whatever reasons that the charges are. So there are other options you have available, but I don't want to get into domestic violence situations here. But so the things that I've talked to you about in terms of legal protections that are here, that one should keep in mind always that you have a First Amendment right, freedom of speech. That's critically important, which means you can yell back, you can talk back, you can say whatever you want to a police officer. You don't have to be nice and courteous. It's probably not to your advantage to be nasty to them or to curse them, but you do have a right to speak and say what you please. You do not have to just accept what the officer says. Now, you cannot interfere what the officer is trying to get done, but you have a right to say what you want to say within a respectful location, distance, as long as you do not interfere with what the police officer is trying to get done. This is extraordinarily important. The other thing that's important, and it's called the right to assemble, to peacefully assemble and petition your government. Well, what that means is you have a right to protest. Under the First Amendment, you have a right to protest. And the second portion of that is you need to go, you can tell that to the government. You can protest to the government by telling them that, look, what you did was wrong and you should make some changes. The right of protest is fundamental to the Constitution. However, it's a First Amendment right. However, you do not have a right to use physical violence and jeopardize other people's lives in the process of that. I've been involved in these rallies where people throw rocks at the police officer or rocks in the building. I would only suggest to you that you should not, in your protesting, engage in conduct where you destroy your own neighborhood. Do not enjoy, we've seen all these riots down through the years where people are protesting because of some misconduct by the police, but then they destroy their own neighborhood. And when you do that, people have to leave because the government is not going to go back and refurbish houses that were burned down as a consequence of a riotous conduct as people were protesting lawfully and as a right to police brutality. Because in a case like we have here, you could protest and you should protest. You should go to the police department. You should go to City Hall. You should complain about this. But you also should do it in such a way that you're not, in fact, interfering with the rights of government to function and or to destroy buildings or injure people, etc. But freedom of expression, freedom of speech, and the right to protest are fundamental to this whole process. And if they're violated, these are civil rights. If it's violated,
Once again, coming in real quick to anybody just joining, we are watching live the Truth and Reconciliation Conference for Victor Perez, who was shot. He was a
Fourth Amendment right here. This is obviously an important concept here. This is where
he
you
was a
have the right to be free
nonverbal,
from unreasonable
autistic
searches and
17-year-old
seizures.
boy
That is
shot
to
and
say,
killed by
you're
Pocatello,
free from false arrests.
Idaho
You're stopped,
Police
detained
Department.
for no reason. You're arrested without probable cause, and you're thrown in jail
Let's get back to
for a crime you did not commit, and there's reason to believe you did not commit that crime. Well, that's a violation of the Fourth Amendment. Also, the Fourth Amendment is when you are physically assaulted. Physically assaulted is kind of a seizure. Fourth Amendment talks about seizures. Well, a seizure is, of course, when you are physically assaulted by a police officer or a jailer or any law enforcement person. It could be any municipality that has law enforcement activity to it. The school officer is there. Obviously, the county sheriff people are involved, school officers, you name it, of course, police officers. Any one of them can violate your Fourth Amendment rights, and it allows you to bring a lawsuit under the Fourth Amendment through a statute that we call 1983. Now, the case that we involve here, and Mr. Perez is a fourth, and on its face, a Fourth Amendment case because it was an illegal search and seizure. That is to say, there was illegal use of excessive force. The seizure is the force. And to the extent that more force was used that was unreasonable, that's an illegal seizure. That's a Fourth Amendment violation. The next amendment here is a Fifth Amendment violation, and that is the right to remain silent. All of you have known about this. This is your Miranda warnings that you have. You have a right to remain silent. However, if you talk and whatever you say certainly can be used against you, and sometimes you invoke your right to remain silent. The police takes you down, they drive you along, they're being nice to you. You start talking. And when you start talking, whatever you say can be held against you, even if you said initially that you wanted to remain silent. So this is
And that's the trick
self-containment.
right
It
there.
requires you to do that. That is to say that you have to decide whether you want to talk or not. I can't tell you you never should talk. I'm just telling you if you do talk, it is something that can be used and against you. When they say will and can be used against you, they really mean that.
And they
a
will
lot of
use it
police
against
cases
you.
are solved because people talk when they ought not be talking. So that's the Fifth Amendment right. The Sixth Amendment right is just a right to a trial, a right to attorney, and a right to a jury trial. And so that's an important. The 14th Amendment is one of equal protection and due process. It really is also part of the Fifth Amendment is right. The 14th Amendment was written after the Civil War, and so the Fifth Amendment was written when the Constitution was initially enacted. It has a lot of the same rights. One of the issues that is taking place now publicly that you're kind of aware of, and that one of the provisions of the 14th Amendment says if you are born in the United States, you are a citizen of the United States. Well, the president currently is seeking to have that law declared unconstitutional by basically saying that if your mother and father were illegal when they came here, then the baby doesn't become legal because he was born in the United States. That is an issue that is going to be fought out in the U.S. Supreme Court. A decision was made yesterday that kind of limits it, and so now we have some confusion about it. I can talk about that later if questions are asked. But the 14th Amendment is an extraordinarily important amendment, and it's used in most cases, particularly for family members who have their own civil rights violations occur to them when a person is killed and they have a mother and father. The 14th Amendment is a basis on which to bring a lawsuit on their behalf, although the burden of proof is much higher and more difficult. It depends upon the relationship that the mother and father had with the child at the time. So that's very, very important. So the other issue that I don't have here, the operating statute here to bring all these things together is what they call 42 USC 1983. 1983 is an enabling statute, and that just means that allows you to go to court under a particular statute, and under that statute, you make the allegations whether or not it's the first, fourth, fifth, sixth, 14th Amendment, or even the Eighth Amendment, which goes to cruel and unusual punishment statute. So those are the statutes that are there that are available to you. Okay, Raven. Okay, so what I have here, just kind of some notable cases that represent the statutes that I've talked to you about earlier. First one, of course, is the most known case is the one involving Rodney King. It's a case I did in the 1990s. Rodney King was beaten unmercifully by LAPD, and we had in a criminal case, which can happen. The officers were found not guilty, and in a civil case, we were able to get a significant award. I think what this represents, that all of you should know, it is very difficult to get police officers charged with crimes and convicted, even in the most notorious of cases. This case that we have in Perez is a notorious case, outrageous case, and criminal charges certainly could be given in a case of this kind, but only the DA can do that, or the U.S. Attorney here. But the U.S. attorneys under the new system with the Trump administration probably is not bringing many police cases against police officers. In fact,
once again, we are listening to John Burris, founder and lead attorney for Burris, Nissenbaum, Curry, and Lacey. This is the law firm that is representing the Perez family for Victor Perez.
And this is a case that were the first cell phones citizens involved with that able to demonstrate that what happened was done in real time. The Rodney King case was probably the first national case where you could see police brutality in its rawest form, and because there was a camera that was taken by a community guy who was asleep in his home. He heard a ruckus, got up, got his camera, and filmed the most famous case ever at that point in time.
Absolutely.
The Oscar Grant case, which came along later, was really more about the cell phones. And it was, Oscar Grant was an unarmed person. There was on New Year's night, he and his friends were coming from San Francisco when there was an encounter with some other guys on the train that ultimately led to all of Oscar Grant and his boys getting off the train. And the police then came after that was over and sort of was kind of taking charge in a way that was unnecessarily so. But in the process, they shot and killed Oscar Grant, who was unarmed. The officer claimed he thought he had a gun and he shot him in his back, and which was outrageous because Oscar was already on his stomach when this happened. So when the bullet went through his back, it also came back through and ricocheted into his body again. Horrible, horrible case. Now, this is a case where the police officer was in fact prosecuted for what they call manslaughter, because it was pretty clear that Oscar was unarmed at the time, and that the officer claimed that he thought he was unarmed was unreasonable. So he was charged with a homicide. He was convicted of involuntary manslaughter, which we didn't agree with. But at the same time, we understand how difficult it is to get any DA to charge police officers. The next case that I have here, the Oakland Riders case, this was a huge, huge case where I represented 119 people. And it was a case in where 4 police officers called the Riders were engaged in just unconstitutional conduct of false arrests, beatings, playing of evidence, perjury, etc. And so we filed a lawsuit there, got a significant judgment, but also allowed for us an opportunity to look at the department in a grander way. And so we have what they call a pattern and practice part of that case that allowed us to look at and evaluate the police department and how they did business and whether or not there were systemic issues that existed within that department that was contributing to misconduct on the part of this particular officer. This was these officers. And so we were able to do that, and we got a substantial verdict, and we've been involved in that case still because the police officers department has not been in compliance yet with everything that we were trying to get done. The last case here is Tupac Shakur. Well, that was a case where Tupac himself was beaten by OPD officers. He was becoming a famous young man at the time.
Rest in peace.
And I was able to represent him. And he was accused of jaywalking and such a minor offense that really should not have happened that way. Next.
So he represented these people?
It's my understanding that we're running a little low on time. I think we have
If they
about,
want to ask questions.
what did you say?
Okay. They want to ask questions now, they can.
Okay. I'll go to the next. Oh, sorry.
Go ahead and wrap up the next slide. Just wrap it up quick, and then let's open up questions because we've got a number of people.
Well, the next slide, we'll go to it real quick, and I would say this real fast. Okay, I just want to give an example of a mentally impaired person who was shot and killed, where I thought that, like our case here, if your reasonable alternatives could have been exercised and utilized, would have prevented it. In many, many cases with mentally impaired people, de-escalation, that is to say, taking a step back, quieting the situation down, stop yelling and screaming, put yourself in a position of safety, are things that can't happen that can prevent a shooting death occurring, particularly when a case is a person mentally impaired. You cannot expect them to respond in a way that's very similar to a regular, sane thinking person. So this here goes to that. I mentioned ADA, which is American Disability Act, which means that you have a responsibility under the ADA Act to provide reasonable alternatives if you can. There's a lot of provisions available, but I'm sure the family may be aware of some of those. They were involved in those. But I'm only saying that if you come upon a situation where a person is ADA based, well, you can't treat them the same way you would treat other people unless your life is in danger. In this case, there were reasonable alternatives to all of that. And so, anyway, those are my thoughts here. My time is running out. I'm here to answer any questions you may have for the next few minutes. Okay.
Mr. Burris, one question that everybody has, I think, is
I need you to speak up. I can hardly hear you.
Oh yeah, Mr. Burris, the one question that a lot of people ask is they want to know sort of about the anatomy of a case, because people are under the impression, and here's where this question comes from. Most people's introduction to lawsuits comes from TV, right? And the case starts, something happens, they're in court basically the next day, and then the next thing you know, they're in a trial, and that all happens within an hour,
30 minutes,
45 minutes with commercial.
Well, that's not the case it operates. Yeah. First off, like you have a case, you have to, people come to you, they complain about violations. Well, you have to investigate those complaints to see whether or not they're viable or not. But at some point, within a period of time, 30 days, 60 days or so, you may file a complaint. In most cases, in most municipalities, you have to file what they call a tort claim with the city or the municipality. After that claim is filed, a municipality has 45 to 90 days to respond to it. After that 45 to 90 days, then a lawsuit can be filed. The lawsuit can be filed either in federal court or state court. If it's in federal court, it has to have the allegations that I've just mentioned to you, 1983 statute with whether it's Fourth Amendment, Fifth Amendment, whatever issues, maybe 14th Amendment. If it's state court, then those are like assault and battery, false arrest, intentional negligent infliction of emotional distress, etc. Now, you can combine all of those causes of actions into one lawsuit and have them either generally in federal court. If you filed federal courts and state actions, they would generally remove it to federal court. But once that happens, then you file a complaint. And that starts the process. That process can start at any point in time. 60 to 90 days is generally what it is. But once it starts, when you file a complaint, that then each side has, they have to be served, that is given them. Then they have, and you have to do that within 60 days. And then the other side has to respond, and they get to respond within another 30 days after they're served. And then we go to court, and the court will let forth the schedule. And that schedule includes an exchange of documents, a request for documents by each side. The plaintiff and the defendant will request documents from the other. There will be court rulings as to what documents can be obtained, whether or not there are any privileges that exist, and we fight about that. And then you got it. In order to do the case, you have to do what they call interrogatories or production requests. And then after that, once you get all that data, then you got to find expert witnesses. And in this case, like ours here, you need a police practice expert. You probably need a mental impaired person to talk about that autisticness. The other side will do the same. And so this can go on, I'll tell you, before you get to it. Then you have what they call meetings, case management conference with the court. And, then that will go on. Like yesterday, I was in court on a case that we filed 3 years ago, and that we're just getting close. We're getting close to finishing it, but I represent over 30 people, and we're attacking the department. And so that case is unusual, but that's not uncommon for a case to take 1 to 3 years. Rarely do they take less than a year, and they often do not take more than 3 years, depending upon the court's calendar. Federal judges move cases along pretty rapidly, which we like because there's order to the process, and we can get cases done generally within that 1 to 3 year period. No case is less than a year. I think we had one case recently that we finished within a year, but that was a case we didn't have to file the lawsuit because the liability was so clear. The other side, they just want to figure out what the damages were, which we did. So that can happen as well, but that doesn't happen as often. But it's a 1 to 3 year process. And then ultimately, at the end of that 3 year period, there's a jury trial. Now, before you get to that jury trial, there's a mandatory settlement conference. So each side has to make a presentation as to what the value of this case is in terms of what are you trying to accomplish. And that could be money, or that could be issues around changing policies. There are a number of different things that can take place. So, but after that's done and there's no settlement, then you have a jury trial. And that jury trial in the federal court is a unanimous verdict. You need 6 to 8 people, 6 to 8, 10 people. I think I had one case we had 12. State court, I don't know what it is here, but it may be 9, maybe 12, but it's 9 to 3. It's certainly not majority, certainly not unanimous. But that's the process that it takes place over a particular case.
Yeah, and
Okay.
piggybacking off of that one, I think the people of Pocatello really want to know, at least some of the people, what we've been asked a lot is, why can't they just charge the police? Like, why didn't they just drag them off to jail? Because, they feel as though if they, as a person, if they were a citizen that shot someone, they would immediately be arrested and put in jail. So why hasn't that same thing happened to
Well, the consideration is different. Okay, these law enforcement people who have a right to kill. Okay, they have a right to use deadly force. And so if they use deadly force, you have to evaluate whether it was proper or not. You don't just get to kill people. You got to have some lawful basis to do it. But there are a lot of protections that police officers have. And so rarely, if ever, do you get to prosecute police officers. I think we have 3 cases in our office where that has taken place. 2 shooting cases, and that's over a 15-year period. And there are a number of other cases we've had, death shooting cases where we, demanded that the police be involved, and they would say no. We had one case where a kid was shot 55 times, and they wouldn't prosecute him because the police, he had a gun in his lap at the time he was asleep. So the police said that was a mitigating circumstances. So you have to also look at the circumstances as to what the person had. If a weapon is involved in some way, the police may get the benefit of the doubt in terms of criminal prosecution. But it is very difficult to prosecute police. The standard is not the same for everyday citizens because police legally have a right to kill people if they do it justifiably. So the justifiable question can be one that you have to evaluate factually. And the DA, to be honest with you, generally give the benefit of the doubt to the police officers. And if you want prosecutors, then that's who you should protest against. And 2, that's what you should go. You should go to we got the Oscar Grant prosecution case I mentioned to you. That happened after a substantial amount of community protests, serious community protesting. And ultimately, they decided to prosecute him. We had another case. They prosecuted a police officer in a shooting case. But hell, they only did that after he shot somebody else. And he got 6 years in prison. But so it can happen. But it requires a lot of political community gathering and support from the community. And somebody has to make that case to them on a way that they feel uncomfortable. But I will tell you, police, community protesting helps a lot.
Yeah, Mr. Burst, you got a question from one of the community members. Her name is Desiree Raleigh. She just wants to ask a quick question.
Sure.
The task force that's investigating the case here, how do we know who's on it and that it's being fairly investigated as to where it involves police? And it seems very untransparent. And how do we know that it's being conducted fairly in favor of Victor?
Well, you don't.
Mr. Burst, before you answer that, she brings up a good point that we get a lot from, especially from this community. They feel as though they have cases that haven't been properly investigated, and they want the police to be held liable for that. So if you could answer that 2-part question.
Well, first off, you don't know who is on the team because we've made an inquiry. We've gotten information about the critical incident team. We don't get the name of who those people are. All we know is they're going to write a report. It's going to turn over to the Attorney General's office, who will then evaluate it, determine whether or not it was properly investigated or not. I feel your pain about not getting information from these investigations. We have found that it's very, very difficult to do so. I'm just in the middle of a case now in a city called Antioch, where we are, in fact, have officers who've been prosecuted. And we did have the district attorney and the U.S. attorney that was willing to do it, to prosecute them. But it was not easy, and it took a tremendous amount of time. We've had cases where an officer from a local department, they were in fact doing drugs, stealing people's drugs. And it took a while for ultimately a task force to investigate them, and ultimately didn't give us the information, but they did prosecute the officers. So there is a pile of secrecy that exists. They're not going to give you any information while the investigation is ongoing. That we know, because that compromises a potentially investigation. Can they tell you who's on the investigation? They could. They could tell you who's conducting the investigation. There's no harm in that. They're not going to tell you what's going on in the investigation until it's over. And when it's over, they're not going to give you the work product of that investigation, because a lot of that may be highly confidential. And there's also something lawyers may or may not get at some later point, but they're certainly not going to give it out in a public records request. There are certain things you can get in a public records request, and we know that you can get the video, and we can get certain kind of police reports. But a lot of that will be delayed because they will say that the investigation is ongoing, which they have told us. You know, they told us it's ongoing. I'm not one to rely too much on waiting for the district attorney or the attorney general. I just don't believe that. We have to do our own work and make our own decisions about it. But it doesn't give you what you want in terms of the criminal case. It only means we're not relying upon them to prove anything because frankly, I just don't trust them. But that's from years of experience. But to answer your question more directly, no, you're not going to get that information, but up front. Now, investigations that have taken place, that have completed, where no findings have been made again, you should be able to get the public the final report. If the shooting took place 2 years ago, and the investigation is done and there's no prosecution, there is a report of that. And it seems to me you should be able to get that to a public records request. You're not going to get the nuts and bolts that went into it, but you can get the report and how they reached that decision. That seems to me that's entirely reasonable and something that should be given.
Yeah, Mr. Burris, we got time for one more question. And we want the gentleman, go ahead and say your name and just ask the question.
Okay, my name is Michael Trejo, and I'm from Nampa, Idaho. My son was mentally ill. He suffered from bipolar and schizophrenic. He took prescription medicine. Well, he was in the mental ward in the hospital, and he escaped. The hospital called the police to retrieve him, and it happened right in front of God and everybody. Lots of recordings over it. The officer, he did not have no weapons in his hands, and killed him. He shot him and killed him. There was over 12 rounds fired, and on the investigation report, there was no body cam. And when they spoke to me that night, they told me something had happened. The next day, they changed that story, and they also contacted the news, changing their story. I don't know if they're allowed to do that, but there's lots of stuff that's in just about this case because it was biased the whole way. And I believe that, it's misconduct of law enforcement and obstruction of justice because lots of its civil rights were violated, and they don't seem to care. It was.
Interrupt you and tell you, you're right. These happen often. That unless you do something immediately to get the information, you're going to be bound by the information the police put in a report. And I'm going to tell you, they do cover up. These are not secrets. Now you may not have had the ability to fight this, but you do have to have someone to do that. Otherwise, it will go unchecked. If what happened to your boy, maybe it was legitimate, maybe it wasn't. But unless you find out if he's unarmed and he's mentally impaired and they know he's mentally impaired, you got to have some basis upon what you kill him. I mean, did he charge you? Did he run after them? Did he have a knife? Something that can justify. But otherwise, if you don't have information an ability to challenge them and you're stuck with the police officer's statement, I can tell you it's never, ever, ever going to be favorable to you, to the victims, ever. And the families will suffer as a consequence of it because they don't tell the truth about these incidents. It's designed to cover and support the police. And I'm not mad about it. I just know that's how it is. Because I've dealt with them for 30, 40 years. And it's never changed.
Yeah, Mr. Burris?
That's
okay, wait, hold on. We got a lot of conversations going on. So you wanted to make one more comment, sir? You just said there's
several recordings of it. I have obtained a lot of it. It happened in front of God and everybody. It was controversy, but I didn't know what I was doing. The thing is that we have several recordings of it that contradict everything they're saying. I got the proof, but just nobody would listen to me over there in the Treasure Valley. They just won't. I don't know why.
Listen, you got to have a lawyer to represent you. Okay, they're not going to represent you because they don't want to be caught in a liability situation. If they can cover it up, they will. They will. So you have to have a lawyer to speak for you that can investigate and know what the rules of evidence are and knows how to get documents. But unless you do that, you'll never get the information as a private citizen.
Yeah. Hey, Mr.
Unfortunately, I hate to tell you that.
Yeah. So we ran out of time, and we got a
Okay.
lot of people here who want to speak.
All right.
And but there is one thing that I think either you and so we'll go like maybe 5 minutes over our educational portion, but you and I think Jennifer Call, who's the local attorney, you got to address this. Is people are frustrated because they're having a hard time. I think that's really what the gentleman is saying, is having a hard time getting representation. Everybody I'm looking at is kind of like, I've had a difficult time getting representation for police cases. And I'd like you to give like a 1 minute answer, just, in terms of
Well,
why it's
I would
hard.
say that that's
And
probably true. That, and I'm not probably, it's true, because there are not a lot of lawyers who do this kind of work. It's challenging work, and you got to be able to do that in an environment that's relatively hostile. So it's not surprising. It's a small community, but you undoubtedly will have to get lawyers from out of the area to come into town to represent you. Otherwise, the town just doesn't have that many lawyers who are prepared to do this kind of work, because it is challenging. And you have to recognize that, to some extent, the police are not favorably disposed toward you, toward the lawyers.
and I'd also like to give Miss Jennifer Call a chance to answer that, because she's local and did a lot of explanation. This is part of the educational portion in terms of why it's hard to get it locally or anywhere in Idaho. I mean, she's got very unique insight on that.
Yeah, well, I'd second what Mr. Burris said. Idaho is an attorney desert, pretty much. If you're not in Ada County, Boise area, there really are not a lot of us attorneys around, and most of us don't do civil rights law.
Yeah.
And when you even get outside of Pocatello a little bit, there's hardly anyone. So for all of Bear Lake, there's like 2 attorneys, right? The prosecutor and one public defender who actually travels in from a different county. There's literally no one to take these cases. So Mr. Burris is correct. People who need help, oftentimes they have to look towards counsel in bigger places. The San Francisco area definitely has a lot more options. And then that's where local attorneys like myself come into play, where I can use my license and apply for what's called Pro Hoc Vice. So out-of-state attorneys can come here and they can practice, and they can help us Idaho attorneys get some justice for people, and connect people. And so that's really a part of what today was. And thank you.
Yeah. So and Mr. Burris, I'll say this before we let you go. In California, a few thousand people there's 2 times a year where people take the bar, and there's a few thousand people that take the bar. So you can just kind of start doing the math. And in fact, in some places in California, like Alameda County, where we are, San Francisco, you can throw a rock and hit an attorney. But even in there, where it's an attorney-rich environment, there are very few people that do this type of work. Like Mr. Burr said, it is difficult. It's a specialty. And it's not because, so when you talk to attorneys and you're seeking them and you can't just come to the conclusion that, oh, they're afraid. You don't want your plumber doing installing your electricity, right? And vice versa. Like you don't want a race car driver doing your heart surgery. So you have to find somebody with that expertise. And then, a lot of people come and they're out of town, and a lot of times, unless you're licensed in that particular state, you can't do it. So just understand. But again, the reason why we're here today with Mr. Burris, with Jennifer, Thomas, the other attorneys that are here, is because we want to hear the cases and maybe try to match people up, or at least give you a chance to be heard. Which is, unless you have anything else to say, Mr. Burris, we're gonna transition into the truth and reconciliation.
Well, I would only say it's very, very important for the community to come together when something like this occurs. Silence gets you nowhere. The people, the community people need, and the public needs to know that the community is outraged by this, and it becomes an opportunity. Every controversy presents an opportunity. And it's up to you to make that opportunity known to them, because what you really want to do is have a better way for this department to handle mentally impaired people, aside from holding them accountable. But we want to know about the next person, to prevent the next person from being killed. And what are you putting in place? What kind of training are you doing? What kind of things are you putting in place to prevent that from happening? That's what you want to find out, and that's what you want to have done. Okay? All right.
Thank
Thank
you, Mr.
all of
Perez.
you, and good luck. I'm glad you all came out today. All
Okay,
right.
thank you.
Take care. All right.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
So folks, we're gonna start off the truth and reconciliation portion of this, okay? And so what's gonna happen is, Raven, if you could discontinue sharing, we want to, and we probably need Brian Kroenke available for the next few minutes. But, so again, we're gonna have Alice Shakina moderate it, all right? And he should, and let me just go over the rules real quick. But basically, we want everybody to come up here and put it on the record, right? Everybody's got 3 minutes, but we're going to start first with Mr. Alizé. We're going to bring him up to the front, and he's going to talk real quick. No, come on up. Stand next to me. All right. So Mr. Alizé, he's going to talk, and Brian, we're going to need you front and center to translate. And then, yeah, Raven, if you could stop off your that is the people online, and we want Mr. Alizé.
I don't think I'm sharing anymore.
You're not? Okay, that's fine. That's fine, Raven. So
I made you the host though. I don't know if that's helpful.
yeah, probably because well, that's all right. We'll figure it out though in a second. So, but before we get into it, we need Mr. Alizé, who represents the family of Victor Perez, to say a few words and just kind of start this off, and then we'll turn it over to Ms. Shakina. So, señor, entonces puede hablar a la gente, dice que quieren que
Okay, I believe the guy is going to translate for him.
por favor, habla la gente, a la comunidad.
Todavía nosotros estamos muy estimados de esto que sucedió. Todavía no creo lo que está pasando. Yo no quisiera hablar mucho de esto porque esto no son cosas para hablar. Lo más que yo prefiero, lo más que yo quiero para estar contento, que esto se haga justicia lo más pronto posible, que no esperemos mucho tiempo, ni años, ni meses, ni nada. ¿No? Si es posible este mes, que se haga la justicia, o el mes que viene, cuando sea. Después de esto, entonces veremos con lo otro que va a suceder. Pero lo más importante es que quiero justicia, porque aquí falleció un ser humano dentro de mi casa, al frente de mi puerta de mi casa. No fue afuera ni en la calle, fue al frente de mi puerta, donde yo salgo todos los días a ver mi patio, donde yo me tomo mi café. ¿Y qué es lo que veo? El niño muerto ahí en el frente. Yo no quiero que esto suceda más, porque ya esto sucedió aquí, creo que varias veces. Vamos a seguir así. Esta gente que son matones, porque no se puede decir otra cosa, no debían de estar en la policía, porque esa gente no eran policías, ellos son matones, y ahí se va a quedar. Porque si hubiera sido policía, hubiera tenido conciencia, hubiera preguntado, Luis, ¿qué es lo que pasa o algo? Hubieran ido como se debe de ser, trabajar bien como se debía que trabajar, y no entrar así como vaqueros a disparar ahí. Podía morir yo, podía morir la niña, podía morir la madre, podía morir otra persona más, los vecinos, porque eso, no son 9 tiros, yo tengo pensado que son 12, pero yo creo que son más tiros de lo que hay. ¿Dónde están esos otros tiros que salieron para afuera? ¿Dónde están? Si cogen otra persona, también estuvieran en la calle, como en la comunidad, andando por ahí, como están ahora mismo, están en estos momentos. Ellos están en la libre comunidad como si no hubiera pasado nada. ¿Por qué? Porque estamos en el pueblo de Pocatello. Porque estamos aquí en Idaho. Si es en otro lugar, esos oficiales no estuvieran en la calle. Eso solamente se está viendo aquí en este pueblo. ¿Por qué? A lo mejor porque somos latinos, somos hispanos. Eso no se hace. Eso es una falta de respeto para la comunidad, para nosotros en Pocatello. Eso es una falta de respeto. Que 4 personas hayan ido a matar a una persona que la edad de él es de 6 añitos. 6 añitos tiene ese bebé. Tiene 17 años, pero la capacidad es de 6. ¿Será que los policías son cobardes? Tienen miedo, tienen miedo. Porque yo no puedo creer que una persona que no pueda caminar pueda brincar una fensa. Ellos no vinieron a ayudarnos, ellos vinieron a matar, a matarnos. Y podía ser por por cualquier de estos que están aquí, podía pasar eso. Porque si usted tiene un niño en su casa y agarra un cuchillo, usted llama a la policía para que lo ayude. ¿Para qué quiere la policía? Para que lo ayude. No es para que venga a dispararle al niño porque tiene un cuchillo. Entonces no son policías, son matones. Vinieron a matar. Eso no se debe hacer así. Y yo lo que pido es que le hagan justicia lo más pronto posible. Para mi mente estar limpia, porque yo sé que la mente mía está bien mal. Y gracias a Dios que no sucedió algo más. Eso es lo que yo le pido a Dios, que no sucedió algo más. Que Dios lo bendiga, que no pase más, jamás esto.
Okay.
Un momento por traducir, Brian.
Yeah, James and everyone, I think it's important that Luis had the opportunity to just continue with his statement. I think you can all understand that I won't be able to translate every word because it's so long, but essentially, he's saying that they're still hurting every day, and as he goes out through the door of his house into his patio, his yard, where he likes to go and drink coffee and where they live. He still sees his grandson lying on the floor there, shot. That the police didn't come to help. They were called to help. They came to kill. And they're killers. They're not police. They acted like the Wild West, like cowboys. And he wants to see justice done now. He wants to see justice done, if it were possible, this month, next month. Although he hears from the lawyers that it's going to take time, it may take a year or up to 3 years, as Mr. Boris explained. He wants to repeat that this was a human being, a child that they loved, who, even though he was 17 years old, had more the mental state of a 6-year-old. And so to them, he was a child, and a child they loved. And this is not an animal for the police to come and just take care of without thinking or reflecting on. I don't know if anybody's seen the video, but they were there for 6 seconds before they started to shoot, right? 6 seconds. And I'm sorry, Luis, if I'm not getting the whole translation done, but I think I'm trying to get across the spirit of what you said. And if there's any questions for Luis that I could be more, we could do it in a more kind of broken up, shorter segments, then we can get to a more accurate translation. I'm happy to try to help.
Okay. There's another Spanish speaker. She said, was there something else you wanted to add?
Tampoco el pueblo, o sea, el pueblo como de Pocatello, el pueblito este pequeño, ellos no se han acercado a nosotros a nada, ayudarnos a nada, tú sabes, no tienen ninguna comunicación con nosotros. Ellos nos tratan a nosotros como si nosotros fuéramos de otro mundo. Bueno, yo le voy a decir la verdad. Yo no puedo creer eso. ¿Qué van a hacer ellos con el error tan grande que ellos cometieron? ¿Qué palabras ellos me van a decir a mí? Ellos no me pueden pedir perdón porque ellos no, el pueblo como el departamento de la policía aquí no tiene la solución para resolverle eso. Porque ellos no pueden pedirme perdón ni nada. ¿Por qué? Porque ellos cometieron un error que esto ni Dios se los va a perdonar. Pueden ser los más cristianos pueden ser los más cristianos que sean, puede ser mormón y puede ser católico, puede ser pentecostal.
For anyone just joining in, there will be a translator that comes on and translates what he's saying.
La justicia es lo que ellos piden, porque esas personas no debían estar trabajando en la policía.
This is the Truth and Reconciliation Conference for Victor Perez.
Yeah, it said that, as you know, I'll know Pocatello is a small town, and no one from the cities reached out to see if they could help, to see if they need anything, to express any kind of regret or apology. And these police, if it were in another town, he feels wouldn't be on the street. They would be on some sort of leave, or they would be not walking around with guns still. But these officers in Pocatello they're on the job. They're working as if, nothing had happened. And that's why he needs there to be punishment. He knows they will be punished by God, and that God is witness to all of this, but
Absolutely.
that they need, as family, they need to see something material, something where these officers are punished, that justice is beginning to happen, because otherwise they feel like like they're nothing. Like because he says maybe because they're Latinos, maybe they don't matter, and it's not okay.
That's hard. That's tough.
No. Okay. Muchas gracias.
Yeah, Cheryl, I don't either. Well, I do, but I don't.
So that sets the tone. All right. That's how we want to go, and that's how we want to get started. So we're going to turn it over to Ms. Shakina, and we actually have so the people that were the introductory speakers, they'll come first. But actually, I'd like to invite Miss in the green jacket.
This is James Cook.
She talked to me. Yeah. Yes, please, right here.
One of the partners at
Come up to
the Burris Law Firm.
On the far wall right here, and this is where you're going to speak, folks. So we'll call on people. We're going to call on the first 10 speakers, but first we're going to have her. We're calling people. You actually moved it. Yeah, she's coming over there. Yeah, right there. Yeah, you started to talk about a case, and then I'll let Alice has a list, and after you, she'll just.
So I was actually invited to this.
Thanks for coming, folks.
This conference from the law firm that's representing this family.
My name is Shauna Anderson, maiden name Walker. I'm very sorry what happened to Victor, and hate to admit that my brother was the first racial killing in Idaho. The 4 Boise officers drowned him 37 years ago, or I might have lost my count, but he was drowned in 1990.
Oh, man.
So when I seen what they did to Victor, it just started it all over again.
Ooh.
The brother that they drowned, his mom lived in the house that you and Victor lived in. So it's a really vicious circle. And I want to say I'm sorry, and I hope you do get justice, because that will help me get justice for my brother also. And then once again, I'm very sorry.
Brian, could you translate that? Brian, could you translate that for Mr. Perez?
He's going to translate it into Spanish.
Yeah. Luis, la señora expresa que su familia fue quizás la primera muerte racial en Idaho, que hace 30 años aproximadamente la policía les llevó al río y lo ahogaron. Ella nunca vio ninguna clase de justicia o acción en contra de la policía por este caso. Y al ver el caso de su nieto, de Víctor, todo como que se le ha regresado el dolor y ella sufre y sufre por ustedes, piensa en ustedes y espera que en este caso algo de justicia se pueda lograr. Y repite que está con su corazón para ustedes, ¿ya?
So go ahead, Alice, if you want to.
Thank you very much for being here. I'm going to set some ground rules so that everyone sort of understands how the Truth and Reconciliation will go. And so this is a space where we want everyone to be able to share their stories and feel like they're in a safe space. So I'm going to ask everyone to please only listen to the stories that people are sharing here. We're not here to judge anyone. We're not here to point fingers and blame anyone. This is a place where we really just want to come to a deeper understanding of everyone's collective experiences. Okay? And so with that in mind, I think, James, did you say everyone has 5 minutes?
Yeah, we'll start off 5 minutes, and then we'll be transitioning it to, we just want to stop at 3 o'clock.
Okay. So for the first speaker we have here, and everyone will have 5 minutes. And then James, you're the timekeeper, correct?
I'll keep time and shut it off. I'll turn off the microphone. I'll give you a little warning, and then we'll shut off the mic. We'll just say, hey, you got to wrap it up.
Yeah, James, that's what I'm talking about.
Consider of everybody else so they can speak.
Are they
And
all
can
U.S.
you line
citizens?
For people with questions as
Yeah.
well?
I'm going to guess so.
So if we can have Irma Valero come up.
Okay, for those of you who've just arrived, my name's Irma Valero. I'm a mother of 4 amazing boys. 3 of them are able to be here today, so that means a lot to me. I love this town. I could love anyone in this room because I see something, for lack of sounding cliche, something beautiful and honorable and
Because
dignified about all of you.
not every U.S.
I'm
citizen
here to
speaks
speak
English.
because Victor, when I heard about this April 5th, I still remember that day. I woke up Sunday
Kind of
morning
racist.
and I usually lay in bed and I scroll Facebook just like any other Sunday morning. And then I saw a video that I couldn't believe I was even watching. It shocked my senses. I got in the car and I drove for 2 hours and just bawled because I thought about my boys. I had to physically calm myself and bring myself back to breath as I got back into town, and I looked at the news article once again and found the address to the Perez's family home. Sunday afternoon, I showed up to his house, and I didn't know if I would be received with a welcome. I would respect that if they didn't. But I felt like I was walking on sacred ground when I walked up to that door.
I feel like she
But I was also
paused because she
surprised
read
because
your
it looked like a
comment.
normal house. I was expecting to see smoke. I was expecting
'Cause
to see blood.
what?
I was expecting to see yellow tape. I was expecting destruction, but it was just a quiet little house. And it didn't fit what had just happened the night earlier. I just wanted to show up to the family.
By the way, that's one of the most
When he opened
American
the
things
door,
to say.
I
If
saw
there's U.S. citizens, they
Senor
should
Luis,
speak English. We'll just
and
throw that
I
out there.
questioned why he
Sorry.
wasn't just collapsed on the ground. He was standing, and I imagined my own self not even able to walk in something like that. But I also saw that he looked like me. We have the same skin color, and it was like a mirror. I offered what little I could give them is just to be seen. That someone somewhere, some stranger who's never met them before, cared and saw it. I walked away with one last word and I said,
That's like
"You
telling a
need to
deaf
get
person
away."
that
And I
if
don't
they're
know
U.S. citizens, they
when or
need
how
to
he was
speak
able
English
to,
and not
but
sign it.
thank God he does have the law firm representing him today. When I was dismissed from the electrical apprenticeship program from the union last February, it came as a shock. It was a exciting moment for me to lift my boys up to a better life so we wouldn't have to ration each week how much we could spend on groceries. I was finally on my way to be able to make money so that we could actually plan a summer vacation. We have never been on a summer vacation. Being a Hispanic woman in the union and in the trades was challenging. I had journeymen ask if they could paint my face to their naked pictures on their sketchbooks. I had people ask, "Why are you here? What does your husband think about you working in the trades? You seem too nice to be here." Every day I had to prove myself. And then when I got a call after I had finally decided that I wasn't going to be silent anymore, I filed a formal grievance because I was tired of being quiet and being treated the way I was. It was a Friday at 3 o'clock, one more hour left of the day, and I got a call from the school. They said, "We're calling to let you know that the committee's decided to end your apprenticeship." I asked why. They said policy violations. I asked them what policy violations. He, the director of the school, said, "That's all I know." Unfortunately, I was passed around in a circle. No one would give me answers. Back and forth, no one could tell me. So I know what it's like to be pushed around and have the door quietly and with a smile closed on you. So that's why I'm here, because I'm not going to stand here and let it happen over and over. I'm not just going to feel bad about it. I'm going to do something.
Good.
And I hope you guys do too.
That's why I'm live streaming this whole 5 hour long
Thank you very
conference. This
much.
is
Next, I'd like
5
to call up
hours from
Cynthia
12 to
Lopez.
5.
It's like she did, just wrap it up like that, right? Here we go, right? Yeah, right. Let's go.
Hi, my name is Cynthia Lopez. I come from Caldwell, Idaho. My son got shot by the Napa Police Department on August 16th. My son was taken to Napa Police Department. That was the day everything changed my life. My son struggled with mental illness. Nobody really knew, just me, baby, and his dad. You know, he flagged down the police department, and they took him and they shot him. You know, he arrived at the coroner's office with handcuffs. He was dead. And nobody wants to take the case. Nobody wants to help. I think we all need to come together as a community and figure it out. You know, if we have to walk Boise tons of times, then so will be, you know. I think that we all need to just kind of get together and they need to learn some kind of protocol for mental illness, especially when you call the cops for help and they turn around. That's the kind of help I got. You know, it is what it is, and I'm hoping that maybe somebody will hear me and help.
That is so
Because,
sad.
they pretty much to get you, as you know, we don't have no money to get a lawyer. I strongly agree that if we come together as one, we will all get some kind of good outcome out of this, you know? I just want justice for my son. He was the only son I had.
No justice, no peace.
So, that being said, thank you. Thank you for letting me talk, and hopefully everything works out. Thanks again.
Thank you very much for sharing your story with us. Next, I'd like to call up Jennifer Hall.
A lot of these are going to be just gut wrenching stories that you don't hear anywhere else. So just be prepared for that. Grab some tissues.
Hi, I introduced myself earlier. I'm Jennifer. And I just want to help with everybody with bringing awareness to what is going on and how the members of our community that are I don't know what you would call, but you know, your LGBTQ community, the anybody that is a minority, mental health issues, they seem to get pushed by the wayside, like they're not real people, and that they're disposable, and that is not right. And there needs to be accountability held for these actions. And another thing I want to kind of bring up is mistreatments at this doesn't have to do with law enforcement, but mistreatments that we also have a issue with here is in our hospitals. Because there's a lot of mistreatment that goes on at the hospital there. My daughter, she was in ICU for 4 weeks up at Portneuf, and she had mistreatment by some nurses because she was transgender and she was also autistic, and they were letting her make medical decisions, and it was just a mess. And some doctors did not treat her very well, and then she went over to Seattle and had pretty bad treatment over there as well. So I just want to bring awareness, not just to law enforcement, but to also how our hospitals are treating our community as well. We need awareness for that and patient advocacy.
That is.
I feel my heart goes out to all these families because it's really hard when you lose somebody to a tragic thing like this that's
Preventable.
I'm not putting down anybody that's passed from a car accident or an illness or anything like that, but when it is a violent crime, it hits in a whole different way. And I'm so sorry to you guys. And thank you.
Thank you, Jennifer. Next, I'd like to call up Rochelle Nagashoa.
Okay. Hi, my name is Rochelle Nagashaw. I'm a Shoshone-Bannock tribal member.
Shoshone-Bannock tribal member.
And I came to speak about a 2023 shooting incident that happened on the reservation regarding my son. He was having a mental crisis meltdown, and the police responded. They had previous interactions with him, knowing his mental. I don't know how to say that, but yeah, they've had previous mental. I mean, I can't even talk now. Okay, sorry. Start this again. I'm very, very emotional.
I'm already getting emotional, girl.
His shooting was broadcasted live on Facebook before the police even came to notify the family.
What the fuck?
My children woke up that morning and opened Facebook. They saw their brother getting murdered on live broadcast. The press release that was released out to the public did not match what had happened at the scene. Okay. I just remember the police showing up at my residence in the morning, telling me that an incident had occurred at a certain area, and for my family and me to avoid this area for a few hours. I tried to ask questions, but they told me they were not able to give me any information at that time. I was given a business card And I was told an FBI agent will be in contact with you and your family to discuss what had happened. To this date, almost 2 years later, I have had no contact with any FBI agent
What the
regarding this
fuck?
incident. I have had no contact from the Fort Hall PD, the Criminal Investigative Department, regarding any findings or report that they have had. I have placed written requests in with these departments with no response. I myself reached out to the coroner in Blackfoot to ask if I could get the autopsy report and the findings that he had. He agreed that I could, so I put in the request and I spoke with him. As to this date, he has not responded back to me. I feel that
What?
transparency is needed. There were many questions that we had that were never answered. To this day, we are still in the dark. I have had a hard time finding representation on the reservation regarding this incident. I have had many community members reach out to me in order to help me, give me advice, to suggest, different options that I have followed through with, but I have found no resolution to this senseless killing. My son had mental disabilities for the past 3 years before this incident. He was in and out of behavioral crisis centers. He had peer support.
Recording in progress.
That helped him when he was feeling meltdowns. He could call them. They would come and get him out of the house, talk with him, work with him. He went to Blackfoot South several times when he felt that he needed the help. He was diagnosed with schizophrenia and Asperger's disease. The two officers that were involved in the shooting had previously saved his life when I called and I needed help during other incidences prior to this shooting, where they revived him and got him to the hospitals to get this mental health, help. So they were very informed on his condition. It was an isolated event. He was no harm to himself, no harm to others, until the police came and started yelling at him, and it was all recorded live. I feel like silence gets nowhere. It's taken me nearly 2 years to actually come out and speak publicly on what had happened, not only to my son, but to our family, to my children, to myself. I have been to therapy. When this first happened, I was overwhelmed. I felt like I didn't know what to do. I was lost. I had so many departments reach out to me for my mental health. I was top priority to getting therapy, which I now have heard the Perez family has not had that opportunity nor chance to get the proper professional, counseling that is needed. I was seen in Blackfoot by Bingham County, a really, really good therapist. Holidays were the worst for me. Honestly, the empty seat, knowing my son wasn't going to be there anymore, her advice to me back then was just survive. Just survive this holiday.
Survive.
You will get through this. And she talked me through this. She found me coping ways. I turned to spiritualism. I went on to a journey. I went elsewhere to find peace of mind within my head and my heart. My heart is still broken. But I am now, confident enough to talk to people who are going through this.
Cut my camera off.
Advice that I went through. I have had so many people come to help me that I have heard many stories, not just my own, but other tribal members whose families were shot in really suspicious, mannerisms, that actually resulted in deaths that they themselves had never gotten the opportunity to talk about. There was a case on Siphon Road, juvenile shot in the back. Case in Blackfoot, another tribal member shot in the back.
I remember that.
It's not happening just here in this community. It's not happening just in Fort Hall. It's happening everywhere. And we do need to come together as a community to get somebody to listen, to get that support needed for the police to be retrained in de-escalation processes, to recognize and be sensitive to mental, disabilities, because it comes in all shapes and forms. There isn't just one, particular mental disability out there. There are many forms of it.
Can you
and
not
they need
see
to
it?
not be so trigger happy to pull the gun and end someone's life when they could be talked down. And okay. I'm sorry, I get really, really super nervous talking. When I saw what had happened live on TV with the Perez family, my heart sunk. I felt in disbelief that this had happened on live TV. You know, this was happening now right here in front of me, and my heart sunk. I just had all these flashbacks, and I remember how I felt, you know, seeing this on social media, you know, just seeing all the twisted stories that were told that, you know, just defamed my son's character. He was a humble, kind person. He was very outgoing. My son in the community was very popular. He was at every event that we had out there helping. You know, he participated in ceremonies, he participated in culture events. He was an avid hunter. He was an athlete. You know, he held records out of our community for his, you know, football. So I guess I'll, you know, I'll close it up, but you know, my prayers are with you, with your family. I've been there. Therapy, you need the therapy. You know, after you get through these emotions and you get the help that you need in order to go through the emotions and your feelings and you will start to heal. In time, you will be able to speak out and let people know your emotions, and your home life will improve. You won't have the war zone inside the home. You know, you will be able to actually start that healing process. You know, I heard you
I'll
when you
take
said
this
that.
moment
No,
to
that's
say,
how you
share the
felt.
stream.
I wanted to blame. I wanted to be
Get more
angry.
people watching
That
this.
wasn't. I never sought legal counsel back then. You know, my statute of limitations is about up for a tort claim, and I have not done any of that because I have been coping with myself, my family, and our mental healing. You know, and so in closing, you know, my heart really bleeds for you. You know, for this young man who was never given an opportunity to grow up. You know, he never got to start a family or to have, you know, his life. It was like taken from him over miscommunication. You know, so the police need to be aware of this. They need that training, some type of, you know, seminar maybe, you know, not just for local agencies, but for the entire state of Idaho. You know, that's how I feel about it. I don't
That's
want to see
fact.
this happen again. You know, my son's death it wasn't, you know, how could I put it? It was not justified. They didn't have to kill him. Yeah. But, you know, thank you for letting me share my story. You know,
Sorry.
that goes for everybody else who feels this way. You know, it's just a necessary killing. Thank you.
That was unexpected.
Okay, please. Yeah, and anybody, I mean, but definitely Rochelle. So,
Okay, thank you.
okay, thank you.
I'm sorry, I put some fans up in the back of the room. I know it's getting hot in here. Will people please watch out for the cords? Because I don't have something to cover those up and I just don't want anybody face first on the floor.
Good thing there's a law firm in the house to take care of any slip and fall injuries. Sorry.
Thank you very much, Rochelle, for sharing your story. As you can see, this is a community that is hurting very deeply. And I'm grateful that you're all able to be here together to share your stories, to know that you are not alone, to know that there are other people who understand the deep pain that you're going through, and that together as a community, hopefully this can become the journey for your healing, because it is very important to heal. So with that, I'd like to ask Anita Roberts to please come up.
I know it's not the time, but she said Anita, and I just went to Bart Simpson's call. I need a man to hug and kiss. Anyways, back to it.
As you know, my name is Anita, and I am here with my daughter, Jennifer, because we believe silence is no longer an option. When I watched the video of Victor Perez, it felt like watching an execution. And I realized this isn't just happening somewhere far away. This is here in our town, done by our police.
Mm.
The system didn't just fail, Victor. It failed all of us,
Mm-hmm.
my granddaughter, and many others. But I want to say this clearly. I'm not here to get sympathy. I'm here to deliver a warning.
Ooh.
Because this won't stop with Victor. And it didn't start with my granddaughter. It continues because there are no consequences when power turns away from the people who need protection most.
Tell him, Anita.
How many police departments in this state have de-escalation policies on paper, but no real accountability for using them?
Exactly.
How many prosecutors toss out cases involving disabled or LGBTQ or mental health because they assume no jury will care?
Exactly.
How many deaths have gone unrecorded, uninvestigated, unnamed? My daughter's life shattered. And I want you to understand what that means. Not as a word, but as a reality.
Mm.
Shattered looks like sleepless nights, a body that aches under the weight of sorrow. It's sobbing in the dark. It's waking up and wondering how you'll make it through the next hour. It's a pain that doesn't pass because when your child dies, all the love you poured into them doesn't vanish. It pours back onto you like a flood. And that love is not small. It's fierce. It's constant. A mother's love is not about approval or conditions. You may not agree with everything your child does, but that love, that bond is unbreakable.
Oh.
It's a golden thread. It ties you to them across time, across pain, across life and death. Jennifer carries that bond in her broken heart every day, as does everyone else who has lost a child. And the worst part, that bond, so deep, so human, was never acknowledged by those in power. So I did something I never thought I'd do. I took a sign, a stool, and sat outside the courthouse by myself to protest.
Good for you, Anita.
Cars honked, people stared, but I knew something true that day. One voice becomes two. Two becomes a movement. Courage is contagious, but so is silence. We need to decide, excuse me, we need to decide what spreads next. I'm asking for 3 things. Number 1, a community-led oversight board with access to police reports involving disabled, autistic, and LGBTQ residents, not just for future harm, for past silence.
Oh, yeah.
An annual public report that reviews crisis response calls.
Okay.
Who was harmed, who was helped, and who was ignored. An empathy audit, a community survey and training review of how institutions treat people who don't fit the default image of who gets protected.
Amen.
Justice for Aoife means we stop pretending her death wasn't preventable. Justice for Victor means this town stops looking away.
That's right.
And justice for all of us means we finally say, no more silence. No more labels that define who lives or dies.
Come on.
That each one of those is a human being with a heart and a soul.
Yeah.
I always tell people, hey, don't do that. They're a person. They have rights. See the person, not the label.
That's right.
Only then can we deserve to call ourselves human.
Amen. Amen.
Thank you, Anita. Something I just want to point out, Anita talked about courage. You all woke up today on a Saturday to come here to share your stories. Please make sure that you have the courage to connect with one another after this. Don't just go home. Connect with the people whose stories you've heard so that you can start to build the momentum that you need so that you no longer will remain silent.
Absolutely. Healing is community.
Connect with each other and have that courage. Reach out to someone today before you leave. I'd like to call Jennifer Hall next. Oh, sorry. I'm sorry. Call.
Hey, we're very close. Well, so James asked me to just talk a little bit. I know I spoke a moment ago about how Idaho is in an attorney desert, essentially, and person after person has gotten up here, and I'm sure they'll continue to get up here and explain how it's hard for them to find an attorney. And so I just kind of wanted to talk about when you go to find an attorney and get some help, there's certain things that can help you. And as James had stated earlier, you know, you don't want, what was it, a race car driver doing your open heart surgery. You don't want
Actually, that sounds like fun.
lawyer handling your civil rights case. There are some lawyers that
I'm from Indiana. A NASCAR driver doing my open heart surgery sounds like a dream come true.
And quite frankly, I shut it down really quickly because I know that's not something that a service that I provide.
Praise
for
Hill.
them.
Praise Dale.
And so, you know, try to do some research on attorneys, make sure they practice in the kind of law and legal help that you need. And then think about it like a creative writing assignment almost. When you get on the phone or in person with them, you want to have what you need to say narrowed down into a couple of minutes.
Is that a title? Attorney General of the state?
Like in writing, you need a hook, right? Like, this is what happened to me. Letting them know this is what I want to see happen. And here's some of the facts, and trying to be concise. You're going to know pretty
You don't
quickly
need a beer.
when you're
Shut
talking
your
to
mouth.
that attorney if they're interested in taking your case or not. And you know, as an attorney and other attorneys, we know fairly quickly if your case is one that we want to take, or that we can take. And so there's lots of deciding factors. Like for me, I'm a firm of one. I have myself, and so if I get too many people,
She is a
asking me
firm
for
of
cases, I
one.
have to just
I
start
am a
rejecting
firm one.
cases because I have an obligation to
stop.
do the best job for every single one of my clients. If I'm just taking cases, I can't do that. So I have to be selective, and other attorneys do too. Like I said, other attorneys, even if they practice civil rights, it will come down to, do they practice that kind of civil rights case? Is that the kind of case that they're looking for? And so they'll know pretty quickly. And you know, just when you're looking for that help, don't think that you can talk an attorney into taking your case.
Go
They're
find that
gonna
Addy
take it or they're
General.
not. And you don't need to waste your time trying to convince them. They should hear your story. and jump on it. And if they don't, they're not the right attorney for you, and keep looking. And so I just kind of wanted to throw that in there.
Exactly. They
And-
should be like that song. Jump on it. Jump on it. Jump on it.
Okay, and so, yeah, just to talk a little bit too about
Sorry.
the criminal charges and how it'll work. I know Mr. Burris touched on it a little bit. So, especially in Mr. Perez's case, the police are investigating the incident. They are going to
Sure they
finish
are.
their investigation and write a report up.
I'm sure they'll do
Generally,
that too.
that goes to the county prosecutor. If the county prosecutor has a conflict,
I don't think they
and
know how to
in
write in
police
Pocatello.
misconduct cases, the county prosecutor in that county always has a conflict, so
They
they'll
sure as hell
usually
didn't
kick
write
it out
me
to a
back when I
different
asked for
county
comment.
attorney. In this case, they didn't kick it out to a county attorney. They went all the way up to the Attorney General, Rural
Yeah.
Labrador. And so it's coming down to,
A
it's gonna
dog.
come down to his decision. And if he thinks criminal charges should be brought on these police officers or not. And so it is a long process. Once the investigation's over, it goes to our Attorney General, and there's not really a timeline that he has to follow to bring the charges. I mean, there's a statute of limitations, but it's quite long, and not satisfactory for the family, for the public who's waiting. We do have a federal civil rights
This will not be a Rolling Stones song.
department, but they've been kind of
We
strict.
will get
and they've
satisfaction.
openly said that they're not going to bring charges against police agencies anymore, and so that's not really an option. And so I got asked earlier, basically who polices the police. And unfortunately, I
Nobody.
don't have much optimism in that right now with the decisions that are being made on the federal government and just the history of it. And so that's why it is important, that we have this case. So the way we're going to try to police the police is force this case, force public opinion, and get some change hopefully made in the department with the training. So,
Yeah, that'll take another 5 years and 20 more people killed.
Excellent. Hey, folks, so we're just, real quick, we want everybody in the room to speak, okay? So, but right now, we're taking a departure just because we need to make sure you understand the other alternative services that we're providing, like what Ms. Shakina is providing, and then also what Ms. Mitsunaga is providing, and that type of thing.
That
Don't
is
forget
Mr.
that after
James
this at
Cook.
3,
He
we're
was
gonna
one of the
close down
first
at
people to
3.
reach out to me when I
attorneys
started digging into this
so
case.
that came, but definitely me and Jennifer, we will be available to talk to you afterwards and kind of get you on the right track. But as Jennifer said, unfortunately, you don't. Oh, we got Judge. Well, we got the judge here. We got Judge David Archuleta. Like, we can talk to you, give you pointers, even if we can't necessarily take it. And the
Judge
judge,
David Archuleta?
he can put you on the right track, but again, he's
What?
bound by ethical rules where he can't take the case either. But just so we can make sure you understand the services, first we'll start with Ms. Shakina,
Crazy.
who's also the moderator, then Ms. Mitsunaga. Thank you.
Okay, so I just want to talk a little bit more about the mediation process for those of you who are not clear on what that is.
Give it to me.
So one of the first things I want you to think about is that mediation is a voluntary process. That means everyone needs to agree to mediate. So if you think I would like to mediate and the other side does not, there's nothing we can do.
That means they're a bunch of dickheads.
However, if everyone says, look, we're having a conflict, we want to mediate, and everyone's on board, then you can move forward. And also, you all have to agree on who the mediator should be.
But guess who's not
Right?
going to
So there are a
agree?
few ways that people you can just call around
Sorry.
and just easily pick someone together. And if it's not so easy, there's a methodology where one side decides the 3 finalists, the 3 final mediators, and then the other side gets to pick one of those 3. So that is another way you can make sure that you can each together mutually pick your mediator. Now, I also want you to understand mediation is for any conflict. It can be for family problems. It does not have to be anything that is going to go to court. So if you have inherited a home and the adult siblings are fighting about what to do with the home, someone wants a buyout and everyone else is saying, no, we're not paying you any money. This is the family home. That is a really good reason to go to mediation. It could be that your aging parents need to be cared for and the adult siblings are fighting about what to do with the aging parents. So any kind of conflict where you cannot resolve it on your own is a very good case to go to mediation. So I want everyone to like understand that. The mediator is neutral. They are not going to advocate for either side. And they are there to help both sides listen and stay calm. Because if you're not calm, it's going to be very difficult to think logically, to think reasonably, to get to a resolution. And so as a mediator, what I do is I really help you listen to one another. I use tools. I have people repeat back what it is that they heard. If people are feeling really upset, we go into separate rooms. And then I do something called shuttle mediation, where I go back and forth between the different rooms. You get to stay in your own room, feeling comfortable because someone is not fighting with you face to face. So we do everything we can to help keep you calm. And then at the end, there will be a settlement agreement and you sign it and you move on from there. So I just would like to know if there are any questions about the mediation process that I can answer for you while I am here. Anyone? Okay, great. So I'd like to invite Kyla Mitsunaga. Okay.
Also be available. So I just want to make sure you understand why
I almost thought she was going to call my name.
such a treat that we have Miss Mitsunaga. Okay. And I'll let her talk more about, what it is, but she spent a lot of time. She's an academic, right? Harvard trained. And I think this is, I believe that this is something that she developed while she was there. But Harvard professor, she's done TED Talks on this. And what we're talking about is it's, in fact, the way I see it is, I'll say family constellations. It's theta healing, integrative hypnosis, and she's previously won awards for this process, which she's developed, which is called the Mitsunaga method, right? For helping people to heal in situations like this. Like, for instance, it can be applied to this entire community or to your individual family. And it's done in a group setting. So I just want to make sure you just, understand what a treat it is that we have Miss Naga, and I'll have her explain even more in more detail. Thanks. I hope I didn't bungle that too bad.
Got it.
All right. Watch the TED Talk. I did.
Hi, everyone. Are you guys hungry? Everyone's like, where's lunch?
Yeah, I am actually very.
I won't take too long. I want to thank the Alisei family. Gracias por venir. Thank you for coming. And to everybody, thank you for coming. My own story is my mother was diagnosed with early onset dementia several years ago, and I fell into a very, very deep depression. And so what I did, and I had the privilege to do this, was I went around the world and I found the best alternative healing modalities and I got certified in them. And I bring that to you today. It is my privilege, it is my honor, and I'm humbled to be here to be able to do that for all of you. What is family constellations? It's a healing modality that was founded by a German psychoanalyst in the 1990s. He was living and working with the Zulu tribe. And like any indigenous tribe, they have ways in which to heal on a collective level. They have ways and rituals to connect with their ancestors who are both living and non-living. Of all the 25 modalities that I've tried, family constellations is by far above and beyond any healing modality because it is stronger when we're together. It's a collective, it's a group healing modality where every single person in the room is seen and heard and acknowledged, and every single person's grief, sadness, anxiety, stress, depression, fear, angst, anger is also heard and represented. So I know that not a lot of you can stay, but I will be running live family constellations from 3 to 5 p.m. here. And I encourage you to reach out to me, even if you cannot stay, because I also run these online. And I have community care online programs that are free. Any questions about family constellations so far? Ready for lunch? Yes, Irma.
Yes. What galaxy is that in?
So are you talking about IFS, internal family systems? Yeah, so internal family systems, I've also tried. It's developed by Richard Schwartz, and it's about parts work. We have a Venn diagram overlap with IFS. We can look at the different parts, but it's a completely different modality. And I think it's a lot more powerful than IFS. Sorry, Richard Schwartz, the founder. Any other questions about family constellations? All right. Thank you so much.
Now let's just keep this bowl rolling.
Do you want to come up and speak? We're going to be, if you would like to come up and share your story, we'll be taking those stories now. What's your name? What's your name?
Virgil Barg.
Virgil Barg?
Yes.
Okay, we've got Mr. Virgil Barg here.
All right, these are personal stories.
Well, I sure appreciate the chance to talk here today, and I'm pretty well familiar with what this family's going through. And it's something that's been going on way too long. We definitely need to get something done about it. My personal self, I've experienced different encounters with law enforcement over the years, and you can talk to them and they might agree with you, and when they go and put it in the report, it's a whole lot different than what you discussed with them. My report at the sheriff's office in Fremont County since '02 is over 2 inches thick. On that, they convicted me one time of having an animal at large. It was not my animal. I couldn't prove it wasn't. But since then, there's been another incident where they called me about it. It was not my animal. I took custody of the animal because didn't have any place else to go with it. I kept the animal for 2 days. The man finally come and claimed it. And as far as reports in your file at the sheriff's office, don't count that there's any truth to them at all.
What?
We've been summoned to court. I've been arrested several times. I was arrested once, and I didn't even get notice of it that they were charging me. And at that time, I went before the judge and I told him, I said, Your Honor, I said, we have got no notice on this at all. And the smart bastard said, You're getting a copy now. That was in Fremont County.
What the fuck?
And there are just so many of these situations that they can call me up at night and ask for my assistance if there's animals out, because I just about know who's got what all the way through. And why don't our deputy sheriffs, if there's a horse in the pasture, why should they not know where that horse belongs? Because they should have seen it a month ago. They should have seen it 2 weeks ago. They should have seen it yesterday, but they're not qualified to pat the badge. In Fremont County, we've got some very good officers, but we have got some never should have been hired. They should be fired, and we can't get that done because the big deal that they got going between them. And justice is something that has gone by the wayside. In our Pledge of Allegiance to the flag, we got liberty and justice for all. Justice does not pertain today. It is something that has gone by the wayside, and I don't think most of our law officers even know what it means, because they sure don't pertain to it at all. We've had cases, got one right now where we had a horse stolen, and it's going on 5 years ago. We're finally getting in the courtroom. I addressed the sheriff about it personally. He said he was going to look into it. He didn't do nothing. I wrote him a letter, and he didn't answer it. He had to prosecute an attorney answer it. What she put in the letter was totally a bunch of lies. And I do have an attorney working on that now, but and that deal there, why it's the prosecuting attorney is not willing to do anything for me at all because of who I am. And I'd just like to talk here for several hours, but I appreciate the opportunity to be here today. And we certainly need to get something done about justice, because as this major case here today, there sure isn't justice done, and they're trying to push it by the wayside. And we do have to get on it and say, no, we're not going to accept it. Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, great.
I like
Thank
that
you,
guy.
Virgil. Next we have Kyle Fields. I believe he's online. Is that correct?
Yeah, he's online.
Okay.
Go ahead, Kyle, you gotta unmute yourself. Kyle, you there? Might have lost him.
No, I'm here. I actually, I didn't have a story. I'm actually sharing this this stream with Twitch and everybody that I that I live stream to, and everybody is saying the same thing. That this is outrageous. These stories are completely insane. And it's sad that so much has gone unanswered. It's outrageous. It really is. And I'm glad that I can be a part of this. So, James, really, thank you so much.
Thanks a lot. Thank you, Kyle. All the way from Florida.
Yeah, boy.
Okay, we've got Eric Bars next. Bartz.
He's online. Eric Bartz, if you can hear us. Oh, Eric Bartz is up. Eric Bartz, if you can hear us, he's online. Take a couple online.
Yeah, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yeah, can you turn on your camera?
Yes, I believe so. Okay, thanks for having me.
Yeah, but it's not anything to do with the police.
I just want to say I appreciate hearing the stories today. It's all very powerful. I'm a new member of the Community Commission on Police Oversight in Minneapolis. And strictly speaking for myself, the only thing I want to add now is I'm jumping ahead a bit, but on an optimistic note, that one of the successes very early on in the reform process in Minneapolis is the behavioral crisis response. And I've heard from basically all quarters that it's very effective. A lot of times the professional mental health responders can go out to most of the cases without a police presence at all. And usually successfully address the issue. And I've actually heard as well that the officers appreciate it because they're now willing to acknowledge that they don't have the expertise to address these situations. So just a note for looking forward in your situation there, behavioral crisis response teams. And if they can be incorporated into your system, they can be very effective. Thank you.
Thank you, Eric.
Thank you, Eric. Okay, great. Now, if I could get Raven back on. I believe Raven is online.
Raven Robinson. Okay, let's try Laura Robinson.
Hi, sorry about that.
Yeah.
James?
Go ahead, Laura. Go ahead, Laura.
Go ahead, Laura. Yeah, and again, we're trying to get you to address similar what you heard with Jennifer Call. Laura's been a criminal defense attorney for 35 years in the Bay Area. She's also my mentor. She actually taught me criminal defense, so she's been my boss for a long time. But she can also talk about police investigations and anything, and also the integration between criminal law and civil law.
James, before you step away, I had stepped away for a minute, and so I missed what the point was of your first point of the person who wanted something addressed.
Yeah, I think one of the questions that has been, there's been a lot of questions as to why the police can't just be charged. I mean, that the town is hurting after Victor Perez was shot, and everybody wants to know, why can't you do something about the police? The gentleman just testified about, the horses in his county can't do anything about the police. People are getting pulled over, they're stopped, losing jobs. They can't get reports. Like, why is it that the police aren't arrested in the same way that your clients, Jennifer's clients, are arrested when they commit a crime? Their feeling is that the police commit murder, fraud, any number of negligent type acts. Why can't we as citizens do something about the police? Can you provide insight into that?
I could try, and that has been the age-old question, like, why do police get away with murder, but Joe Citizen gets charged with whatever, and without even a lot of evidence. And my feeling on this is that the police have been essentially protected by prosecutors, because in my feeling about this, prosecutors rely 100% on the police to feed them the information that they need to charge crimes. So they have a very symbiotic relationship with the police. And I don't think that they are much inclined to cut off the hand that feeds them, because if they alienate the police, they don't get adequate police reports in order to prosecute other people. the prosecutors are wholly dependent on the police because the way charges are filed are that somebody makes a report to the police, or possibly the police make direct observations themselves of crimes. And of course, there are crimes against police. And then the police write a police report about it. They submit the police report to the prosecutor's office, and the prosecutor decides whether to file charges or not. But all, at least in California, at least in the state courts, and in the federal courts, it's slightly different, but it's just pretty much the same. But everything filters through the police department to get to the DA to file charges. Like regular private lawyers like James and I, Mr. Burris, we can't file charges against somebody. It has to be either the Attorney General's office, the U.S. Attorney's office, or a local district attorney's office. And so the police are so tied into this process for the prosecutors to turn on the police and actually charge a police officer with a crime, even though it's obvious they committed it. They're very loath to do that because then they alienate the entire police force. And that is sort of their bread and butter for how they get cases. So that's just my sense of why they don't do it. Things did start to change once everybody started having little cameras and videos on their phone, because before there was body cam video, which incidentally tends to get turned off or isn't working or the battery was out.
How coincidental.
When they're committing crimes. So often, even though officers now have to wear body cameras, which really became somewhat mandated because of all this discrepancy that came to light once people started filming with their own cell phones, what really happened. But before people had cell phones and video cameras at their, immediate readiness, the officers could get away with whatever they wanted to say about somebody, even though as a defense attorney, I would always know this couldn't have happened the way the officer is claiming it happened.
Yeah.
And that all came out in the open to the public once people started filming crimes. In fact, there's this public perception that in recent years, officers have been committing more crimes and killing more people than they used to be. And I don't think that's the case at all. I think what the case is that now that there's videos of crimes, like Mr. Floyd, now that there's videos of these crimes, we have proof of that. But slowly but surely, maybe not surely, but slowly, I have started to see some officers charged with crimes, but that's very rare. And I would just say prosecutors are very loath to do it. So that is a problem we face. James, I don't know if there's really anything else you want me to add.
Shirley's a bitch.
No, I mean, that was perfect. Thank you, Laura. Appreciate it. Okay,
Thanks.
We're gonna go back offline.
Okay, so we're gonna start calling people from the audience. If you'd like to share your stories, did you wanna come on up? Okay, we've got Desiree here. Desiree? Raleigh. Yeah.
For anybody just joining in, we are on the Truth and Reconciliation Conference in Pocatello, Idaho for Victor Perez. This is put on by the Burris Law Firm, James Cook.
So honored to be here and to be a part of hopefully what's going to create lasting change in our communities. Some things I wanted to touch on in my 5 minutes here was we're a very diverse community with the college here, with the reservation right next to Pocatello, and it's really important for us to become culturally competent with one another, to be able to put words behind what we're experiencing. There's been a lot of wrongdoings by both police departments, really all in our area. And for me personally, I feel like I've fallen into what I call a gray area, where I can't be represented by the tribes or by Pocatello, and it's very, very frustrating. And so a lot of these crimes that get committed never get prosecuted. And as a woman who has been a survivor of domestic violence and sexual assault and things of that nature,
Okay.
to be victimized again by the police is devastating. To have no one to turn to, and we have organizations around town and in Fort Hall that provide victims assistance things, but we still fall short. And like I said, I'm hoping that as a community, we can come together and learn different techniques, support each other. Just showing up here and showing that we have humility and humanity in us and we care about what our neighbors are going through is super important to provide that kind of shoulder to cry on, or, you know, just empowerment to come share your stories, no matter what it entails. I'm a recovering addict, and I felt like that was one of the main reasons why my accusations or my cases weren't picked up, because for some reason I was looked at as less than because I was trying to self-medicate my own, you know, accrued, what is called generational trauma, which we all have, and it affects us every day. And educating myself has helped me understand what I'm going through, and that a lot of the things that are happening in my body or mind are due to past traumas, you know, in my own family and also in our cultures. And so as we become more culturally competent and put words to what we're going through, we can grow as a society and as a community. And we, the people, have the power to hold the powers that be accountable. We can't continue to allow people to be overlooked. You know, we speak up when people get murdered, but there's so many other things happening in our community: sex trafficking, human trafficking, and none of these things are really broadcast and talked about, and it needs to be addressed. We need to have a safe community to live in. We need to, you know, use our words to help everybody around us. And at some point or another, the police will be held accountable, but not if we don't speak up and share our stories, not if we continue to make ourselves smaller or shrink to their definitions of good citizens, you know? So I really appreciate everybody coming out today, and I hope that we can grow as a community and that people come up and start voicing their experience with trauma and with people who are supposed to protect us. You know, the cops are paid for by us, you know, they're here to protect us and serve us. And we have to make sure that instead of just popping out our camera and watching somebody be shot, we say something. Stop. What is happening? We can't sit back and be bystanders. If you see something, say something. We've gone on in our society far too long with saying, it's not my business, not my place.
Absolutely.
A lot of things can be prevented if we spoke up for one another instead of just putting up our phone and recording it. Intervene. You know, as long as it's not putting you in danger, save someone. Be proactive.
Be someone's hero.
Anyways, thanks for having me, and I appreciate it.
Thank you, Desiree. Mr. Trejo, would you like to come up?
I'd like to say, first of all, I could relate to all these people the way they feel. I went through the same thing, but when you have to sit there and look at something, I don't know if I could play it or not. You know, it's right here in plain view, but just if you just listen, you know, this is what. And it's, you could see it right there, plain view. They don't even go help them. Keep in mind, there's a hospital right across the street. They're sitting there while my son's dying. And it's frustrating when someone just sits there and looks and you can't do nothing about it. You know, it's hard. You know, you can listen to how many rounds that he used. You know, that it's frustrating because you sit there and there's proof right there. You look at it and it shows it in plain view. And this is not the only video. There's lots of them. And still, it's frustrating because, you know, I look at the situation and it's murder. And I sit there and look at this all the time. How can I begin to heal when you sit there, you know, all dads love their kids. no matter what. You know, my kids might not be perfect. I got two of them, two boys, but I love them to death. I'll die for them. And that day when it happened, my boy was having problems. And right before he took off, you know, I told him, son, you know, I want to help you. And he goes, but they're out to kill me, Dad. I go, look, son, I go, if anybody comes here messing with my sons, I'm going to be the first one. He goes, I'm your son too. I go, I only have two, son, you and the one that's inside. I go, if someone comes messing around with you guys, I'll be the first one to die. I promise you. He goes, swear to me that nothing's going to happen to me. I go, I swear, son, nothing's going to happen to you. Later on that day, he was killed. You know, and there's nothing I could have did about it. And I got to do with that.
Oh,
I'm
man.
upset, you know, and it's about more than what you guys think, but that's something that, you know what, you know, I don't want to discuss because it happened a long time ago, but I live a certain way, and I'm broken, and it's got a lot to do a lot with them, but you know what, it doesn't matter. I don't care. It happened a long time ago. I let it slide, but this I cannot let slide. I can't, because I sat there and watched it. I watch it every day. It's right there for everybody to see. It's not hidden. And you know what? They don't even go and help him. The thing is, on the investigation report, he didn't have no knives in his hands. And I don't even know why that cop's saying it. They're sitting way back there where they shot him. You know what? And I believe the way it sounds, that there was more than one shooter. And they didn't give me the chance to say, I would like to know how many rounds were exactly fired. I want a professional to check it out. And I want to know how many rounds hit him, because they don't say that. It just says multiple gunshot wounds. And what kind of damage did each single bullet do? And the ones that got away, I want to know also what they went and did and what kind of damage they did. I want some answers, and I never got them. And I'm upset because, you know what? I promised them something, and I didn't come through. And I live that life every day now. You know, I'm haunted. I'm frustrated because the proof is right here. Not just this video. There's lots of them. That's what I don't understand. They're in Treasure Valley. I show them this, and they don't even want to look. I go, if only you'd look. They don't want to. The proof is right there. It's messed up. I see it. They don't want to look at it. So I know there's no representation. That, you know what? I came here just to see. But you know what? My story right here, it's gold. It is. Keep in mind that the hospital was across the street. He was admitted and he never was released. He died. He got killed under their care. You know what? And they've told me, the attorney said, you know what? We'll take the hospital case. I go, no. Nampa police, I can't let that slide. You know, I let this slide, but I cannot let that slide. You know, it's not my decision to call. I promised him that I'd look out for him. And you know what? I failed. You know, they're the ones that are supposed to serve and protect. They were there that morning. Night shift was there. They came over me about 5:30 in the morning saying that my son was having an episode. They cared about him. Day shift was the other way around. The system let him down. They backstabbed him because I know they knew that they did wrong, because later on, you know, right where I live, my dad got a bunch of rentals, and, you know, people rent right there and things happen. There's always altercations and stuff. They came one night and I was pissed off. And one of the officers told me, Mike, can I talk to you about something off the record? And I go ahead. I go, not that it matters. He goes, it does to me. He goes, I knew your son. I knew your son, you know, because I was a deputy in the Canyon County jail right there. And your son, he was a good kid. He was funny. And you know what? He didn't deserve he didn't deserve that. He goes, but it's off the record. And I couldn't understand why he told me that, because I told him it doesn't matter. He goes, to me it does. I want you to know that, you know what, I had nothing to do with it. I just want you to know that. It's important to me. I didn't know what he meant, but now I'm starting to realize that in the investigation report, there's integrity and morals with all those officers, because they're against each other. Some of them are saying the truth and some of them ain't, because I believe that the ones that are saying the truth, it's helping them, because they don't want no part of it. It's right there. A lot just need somebody to look at it. If they just take a minute and just to look at it, but they don't. Nobody wants to, because I feel that they run the show over there. They're in command. It is what it is. But I'm not quiet. I got 10,000 followers on social media. I didn't know nothing about it. And I'm getting more and more each time. And you know what? I'm not quiet. I talk about it. I don't know what to do, but it's working, but it might be a little bit too late for him. Because like this lady said, the statute of limitations is coming. And the way they do it, they eat most of your time up. You know, by the time you get your all the investigation report, it was a whole year was eaten up. I got best pie for the tort claim altogether. They only left me with 1 year. You know, I got 2 more months left, and I apologize to my son all the time. You know, I know he listens to me all the time. I tell him that, you know what, that I'm sorry. That I'm sorry that, you know what, that I might be too late. I apologize to you because
that's harsh.
I didn't know what to do. So what do? Is drink a lot. That's the only thing that helps me. You know, it's nothing to be proud about, but something has to take the pain away.
That's sad.
And you know what? They know that they did wrong because they've told me. But I'm frustrated because there is no help out there. And there really isn't. You know, there's none of it. But one of these days, there is going to be help right there in the Church Valley. And I'm going to make sure of that before I die. That's all.
Oh, man.
Thank you, Mr. Trejo, for sharing that. Are there any other people in the community who'd like to share their stories at this point? Yes. You can go over there if you'd like. Either way.
Yes, my name's Clinton, and
I'm a little.
and the last couple years I've really gotten my life together, and there's been a lot that's happened to me. And how I see stuff going wrong, to me, it don't matter. We all have civil rights, and we're all the same. And from the stuff I've seen happen to me, and the lies that the Pocatello police and stuff's happened to me, it makes me scared to say because my restitution's doubled, and these people do retaliate. So I understand it's tough to stand up. It's hard. And what I think we all need to do is we all need to come together, and we need to have persistence. And I think the chief of police needs to be voted in by the people and not appointed by the mayor. And I think that like lieutenants and stuff should be like along with the state police and everybody, they should have the proper training and be able to be voted out.
Absolutely.
Because if we the people are being silenced and can't make change, like what's going to happen next? Like race don't matter. Like it's only going to get worse. It's only going to get harder for people. And like, even though my stuff was minor, I sat down with city people like a month before this happened with Victor, and I told him, you guys are going to make CNN. And it happened. And I told him, this is getting out of control. Like, cops will lie, and then you show the proof, and you just get a middle finger. If you go to try to get a civil rights lawyer, you're laughed at, and the door's shut, and you make the judge mad, you're just screwed. And then it's to where your hunting rights are gone, your driver's license. Like, I've almost lost my business and my whole life, and I've never had to try so hard. So I understand what people are going through, and if anything I can do to help anybody or anything, like I say with the Perez, like any labor, anything I can do, just let me know, because as a community, we have to stand as one, and we have to stay united, and we have to do things in the right way, and right's right and wrong's wrong, and it's just that simple.
Absolutely.
I appreciate the chance to speak up, and thank you, everybody.
Yes, come on up. Thank you very much. It begins with you all, right? The power, take back your power.
Yes, it does. Absolutely.
Come on up. What's your name?
Dave Archuleta.
Dave Archuleta.
Thank you. First of all, I'm a retired associate tribal judge for 2 courts, Fort Hall and Wind River. I referred the family, Victor's family, to this attorney and this firm. And I'm glad we did because, again, they need the representation. I want to address a couple things. Number one, I was just reminded by, I've been doing some interviews for Res Radio while we've been doing this today. And one of the young men I just had an opportunity to interview reminded me of the adage, you start with one person. Change starts with one person.
Amen.
Okay. Being brave enough to stand up and say what you think. Being able to walk over to Caldwell Park, have a protest when we need to. Not being afraid of power. When I grew up, this is back in the 50s and 60s. I'm quite sure you're about my age group there. I grew up in this town. I remember when I was about 5 years old, we got to go eat at a restaurant once a month, and it was my turn to choose the restaurant. Well, there was a restaurant that I wanted to eat at, and my mother looked at me and said, we can't do that. We can't go in there. Because in that window of that establishment was a sign that said, no Mexicans, Indians, or dogs allowed. That was here in Pocatello. That was real. My mother, Ora Edmo Archuleta, went to Boise in 1964 to lobby for civil rights. Idaho passed the Civil Rights Act in 1964. We are one of the first states to ratify that. This state, people from this town went to lobby for that. And I know that's a true story because later on we were up at having dinner at the Holiday Inn with Governor Cecil Andrus. He walks up to our table and he looked at my mother. He says, I know you don't. She says, no, I don't think so. This is the governor of Idaho. And I go, whoa, what? Talking back to the governor? But anyway, she says, no, I don't think so. And Cecil Andrus told her, didn't you lobby for civil rights? I was a senator who helped pass that. Again, one individual, young man, Nathan, you said it on tape. One person can make change, one person at a time. I don't know about you folks. I'm outraged that the Pocatello police arrived on the scene, officer getting out of his car, pulling his gun at the same time. Not even finding out what the situation is, not even trying to calm it down, and shooting within 18 seconds. Me, as an individual, I was outraged. You should be too. You should be too. Because they did that in our names. This is our names that they did that. They're our servants. I commend the Pocatello City Councilman who's been coming to these and listening, using his ningis. In Shoshone, these are called ningis. He's listening, and I'm very happy that he'd been here so he can hear what you're saying. I want to know why Mayor Blad's not sitting here. I want to know why other city council people aren't sitting here listening to what the people are saying. We want action, and there's nothing that would be waiving liability or anything or admitting liability for them to sit here and listen. That's the problem. They don't listen to us anymore. So I'm going to encourage young people like Nathan over there to actually put his name on the ballot and run for city council. Maybe we need to start bringing the younger generation in here so we can get some fresh blood in here and start thinking the way Pocatello should have and has in the past. I'm sorry it took too long. Thank you, guys. Okay. Oh, yeah, well. Well, yeah, I do agree. I think Jennifer should run again, because we do need Bannock County prosecutors and people in office that listen to what the people need. The one thing that I was talking to, like Rochelle Nagashaw and the other family members who have been speaking here today, you forgot to say their names. Say their names. Don't don't talk about them without saying their names. They were living, breathing people that were killed by the police. I'm sorry, I'm on my soapbox today, but again, I just reminded yesterday, I had a friend call me up, says you need to ask them about and bring up the fact that 3 city council people ended up quitting the city council because of what the chief of police had put inside of a grant. And that grant language he put in there, we need more police officers because we're expanding the area up there, North Gate. We're bringing in minority, lowering their standards. Thank you. Roger Bray, a city councilman, said it out loud. So they wanted him to be censured because he said the silent part out loud. Well, ladies and gentlemen, we have to say the silent part out loud. You know what I look around this room, I'm very happy today because I see people sitting here and I've been talking directly to them because she has a hat, she has a different view than some of us. That's okay. That's what we're about as Americans. But what we're not okay with is for the police to be shooting a 17-year-old execution style. That looked like a firing squad to me. And I wrote a column about that, and I'm going to be writing a column about this one today because there's other people who have talked to me about different incidents. And again, I visited with the family right after.
And I don't mean to interrupt you, but I've talked today here about how Idaho, we're at a real loss of attorneys. I think that problem is exponentially worse on the reservation. Can you talk about that?
There's only 3 licensed individuals to practice law on the Fort Hall Reservation. One is the Echo Hawk firm. Okay, the second is former judge, Chief Judge Marina Fastors, and myself. I'm retiring. So now that leaves Judge Fastors, who works for a program, so she really can't help people. And the other person, the Echo Hawk firm. But the Echo Hawk firm works for the tribe. They've always worked for the tribe. So how can we, and then right now we don't even have an operational court of appeals. I know because I filed stuff in the Court of Appeals for some of my clients, but it's in limbo because we don't have one. Our last Court of Appeals judge, Pete McDermott, just died a while back. And so what we were talking about yesterday is we don't have representation. I was telling Jennifer, if she wants to do cases on the reservation, she can affiliate with me so at least we can get heard and people can be represented. The other person is Tom Katz-Lamidas, which I'm happy to see him taking civil rights cases at Fort Hall. Tom was the original court administrator when I first started in tribal court as a public defender years ago. And so, again, to have Tom practicing law is great, but there is only 3 people, and one of us is retiring. I, on average, have about 6 people a week calling me to handle cases, and I can't do it. You know, I'm 69 years old. I said I was going to retire by 70. And so I'm trying to actually stick with that. But again, there's so many things going on. And like I said, we have had police shootings at Fort Hall. I'm not going to comment on those because again, because there's a thing called the Code of Judicial Conduct. So I can't comment publicly on any case that may come before you. I've been appointed as one of the Court of Appeals judges for the Wind River Reservation. I'm waiting for the paperwork to come through on that. But again, as an active judge, I can't comment on anything that may come before me as an active judge. So, but this won't because this is City of Pocatello. So, and until I actually take that oath of office again, my First Amendment rights have actually been restored. When you're on the bench, you don't have First Amendment rights. You don't have a right to make public comment. You give that up when you raise that right hand.
That's crazy. I didn't know that.
Now that I'm between it, I can actually say things and I am taking my opportunity. So again, we don't have representation right now on the Fort Hall Reservation to answer your question. Yes, ma'am.
Is that true that they do not have a personal opinion about anything?
What the rule says is I cannot, as an active judge, comment on anything that may come before me as a judge. I should not make a public comment. If I was a judge in Bannock County, I could not have any comment considering the Victor Perez situation. Like the shootings at Fort Hall, you notice I don't talk about them because what happens if I get on the Court of Appeals at Fort Hall? Then I just shot myself in the foot, because then that allows whoever's appealing that case to the Court of Appeals, or if I'm hearing an active case that ends up dealing with that, then they didn't get a fair trial because I've already made up my mind. That's why you don't do that. We should not talk about it, correct? Good question. She says, how can you advocate for yourself if they're not able to find representation? Well, Marina Fast Horse and I both educate people on how to take your case forward in tribal court. Again, it's one of those situations where we've been trying to find advocates or attorneys that will take cases at Fort Hall. Because again, it's one of the, Jennifer put it succinctly yesterday when we were talking about this issue. Jennifer said, well, they don't ever say when they're going to have their bar exam. And when I took it, this is back in the 1999, when I put in for my tribal bar and took the test. 15 of us took the test, 3 of us passed. And it's not that it's a hard test, you're talking about federal Indian law, you're talking about jurisdiction, and the lawyers that were taking the test thought, well, I just got done passing Idaho bar, so I can certainly pass a tribal bar. It doesn't work that way.
Ain't wrong.
Did that answer your question? We can help you, tell you how to present your case, but like I said, people like me, I've been at this since 1999. I'm tired. Okay? That's honest God's truth. I am tired. I don't mind doing this kind of stuff. I want to get back into res radio and build that, because to me, media is important.
So I just want to follow up, if there are attorneys that are willing to take, a criminal or a civil case out on the reservation, can they contact you and have a discussion and possibly be granted access to temporarily, handle that case out there through you?
It's called pro hoc vici, and yes, it can be done. I actually represented a defendant that the tribal council was suing in a jury trial. And so on paper, I'm listed as lead counsel, but it's actually that law firm that did the work and did the presentation. And also, I just wanted to let you know that I'm also been trained by the National Judicial College as a mediator. And so, and that's a skill that is needed. And I don't think, again, something you said about Victor the other day in the press conference, and it stuck in my head, was that the fact that was your boy. It wasn't a rag doll. That was your son.
Mm-hmm.
You're not suing to get rich. You're suing because you want justice for Victor. We agree with you. Give him a hand for being brave enough to sue the city of Pocatello.
Well, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, guys.
If you have any questions, I'll be available after.
James, the people online can't hear you, so sorry, you gotta come over here.
Heard to me is that there's not enough education, and breaks my heart to have to turn away all these cases. But honestly, Judge Archuleta, Jennifer, and Thomas is very knowledgeable, and I think there's some other attorneys here, but I won't call you out, okay? But maybe quarterly we might have to get together and just because of this organize something to be able to train and teach people how to do their tort claims and get to a point and really just teach people how to approach attorneys. So that's a Jennifer question.
So the
oh, sorry. Yeah.
Once again, if you're just tuning in, we are live at the Truth and Reconciliation Conference in Pocatello, Idaho, for
worked for legal aid for
the Victor Perez case.
Same issue
For
as
people watching on YouTube, thank you so much. People watching on Twitch, thank you so much. Let's get back to this.
turning away people quickly. And so to get into legal aid, they have a few grants. Your need is going to have to fall under one of those grants. So they don't do anything criminal, really. Can you step to the mic just so the online people can hear?
So the reason I'm wondering is because there's a lot of people like Mr. Trejo who just spoke. Clearly, it's the frustration when we have these things on video. There's proof right there. How do we go about getting justice for that? What kind of organizations exist to, I don't know, help pay for this, or are there any? Are there any to say, yes, you have a case, maybe this lawyer will take it pro bono? I guess that's just how I am. I'm confused about that whole process. Who can guide us through that? Because like he was saying, people grieve, and by the time they're grieving is subsided enough to think clearly, they've run out of time to legally pursue any justice.
Yes.
Can we form these things on our own, a coalition, or what is your suggestion?
Well, and turning to Idaho Legal Aid for some matters will help. Like if it's an eviction or you're a victim of domestic violence, they have very niche categories. Legal Aid actually will provide criminal representation to tribal members who live off of the reservation. And so they offer a lot of services, but if you call with your own criminal matter, if you call with a civil rights matter, they're just not equipped to deal with that. But we've got, law firms that specialize in that. And so a lot of times I think, it's looking out towards other law firms, the Burris law firm, for example, they'll take your call, although necessarily they may not take the case. And so it might come down to calling multiple people. There's not one source, unfortunately, on where to go for that. So it's frustrating. So. Do you want to? So, if you'd like to make yes, so we're taking speakers up here at the microphone telling their own stories and things. So if you just, are we having people state their name?
Yes, state your name.
My name is Mr. Idaho Law, Idaho Lorax. I have a good background in legal and environmental and cancer and crime and illegal and corrupt attorneys. I deal with them all over the country and the world. I expose a lot of them, thousands of them, because to me, they're greedy. My first case that I dealt with was when I was 16 years old and I won. Me. You don't need attorneys, but that's why we have the First Amendment. Part 5, a right to file grievances. and to just compensation. In other words, that's your ability to bring it into court. Would I say do it individually? No. I'm putting ones against the Soil and Water District and the mayor and the city council, class action. In other words, everybody who will speak up, because that's what we need to do in this country, is all get together, put aside our differences and do that. So basically what I'm concerned about is you all getting off your butts, not be dependent on 501c3 groups necessarily. I'm a media person. I expose things. We help lots of people, okay? And we have all through the years. But it's not my place as a lawyer to do your case for you. I have dealt with my own. And a lot of people know me because of those. So they don't get a lot of news coverage at the end when I won. No, you only hear about it when I'm arrested or something. The mayor banned me, most illegal person, and tried to abduct me with the railroad and the sheriff's department, tried to have me shot by the mayor, by the SWAT team. Those are the kinds of crap that goes on in this community. And some of it's partly with the church. I call them the Mormon Gestapo, but I have lots of LDS friends, and they're starting to stand up a lot more too. But for other minorities, I work with the tribes, trying to sue the BIA and the government for their right not to have their land contaminated and get it back into their control. I'm working with every tribe in this country that I can. And so you need to stand up too. And it doesn't matter if it's a little thing, we know injustice. And that's the issue. And the people responsible, there's always a hierarchy, depending on the crime. It's like my crimes, you know, if it's manslaughter, that's pretty hard to argue in court. So is criminal abuse, neglect, and endangerment for children. Very hard to argue, especially when they all know, because one thing we do is tell everybody. So people know anything about me, know the charges. It's not always up to the reporters to do it for you. But, you know, we have things. Even Davey, you know, and one time I nailed Davey here, Mr. Archuleta, because he was a witness when the mayor pushed the panic button to have me possibly get shot in the city hall. And I said, don't give me this crap about what you can and can't do. You're a witness. And it don't matter what avenue you go. And that will come to light again too. It ain't going away. So anyways, those are the kinds of things you got to be willing to stand up for. And the thing about Mormons don't like to sue other Mormons because they maybe go to our ward. Screw that. That's all I can say. I've been carried out by sheriffs who wouldn't even identify themselves, trying to talk to Randy Smith, Ninth Circuit Court judge, one of the wards I attended. And it's just crap. It's just all crap. It's just control. So either you get control, take it, and continue to do it. And don't think you can't do it. We got the internet. Case law, you can look everything up in the world on your phone. So you don't have to have all this money to have lawyers make it and have all these little peons doing the work for them. You can do it on your own phone. Get a group if you want them to write it better. I look at multiple types of class action suits, just because a variety of people have little different leanings. But the thing is, do it, file it. Even if you somehow lost, the publicity around a class action suit is great. And that makes change. So do it. That's all I can say right now. Sorry if I jumped on you attorneys, but I dealt with attorneys. ACLU, another one. They literally said to me years ago, it would take an army of attorneys to deal with you who have to deal with me. And I said, well, try one at a time, but they wouldn't even do that. So, you know, they're worthless to me, but you know, not all of them. I'm working with some others. And
yeah, well, I appreciate you. You know, people you can file your own cases.
Then help people do it.
And
it's a little pro bono, little bonus there, you know, maybe a little bit, you know, right out, just get started.
All right.
It's like running for office. So what do I need? 5 signatures to run for mayor. Okay. And am I doing this as a coalition? Yes, I'm running for every party I ran under, the Libertarians, the Constitutionalists, and the Green. For mayor, for Senate, for Soil and Water District for poisoning our lands. Okay. Do it. That's all.
All right.
And
Thank you.
for allowing me. And sorry about Victor. I seen the tape when it first was released, and I just, And I'm glad there's other people telling the stories of other places, because I get around, I know, I hear. And like, we got some of our people, reporters with me that cover those things. Yeah, you have a question?
No, I was saying by the.
Oh, okay, well, I'm saying bye to you. Nice to meet you.
Thank you.
All right, anyone else that would like to share? Yes. What's your name?
Paul Schmidtline.
Paul Schmidtland? Okay, this is Paul Schmidtland.
Hey, it's good to be here. I heard about this on short notice. I appreciate every single person that's here. Maybe you've seen me on street corners. I've stood for justice for Victor Perez for a while. I've stood alone. I don't feel alone today. Thank you for being here. I have an autistic son. What I saw was my worst nightmare. So I understand that we may not feel like there's justice here today. Let me tell you, you are justice. You're justice. You're here. You're standing up for Victor. You're standing up for what's right. So keep standing because you are justice. We can't remain silent. We cannot remain silent. To honor that boy, to honor a beautiful son, change must happen in Pocatello. Change must happen, and we are the change. We must ask the mayor, the city council, each other, our neighbors, for change. We don't ever want tragedy to happen again in our city. We are the change. Don't expect lawyers, your mayor, your city council to be the change. They're not going to be your change. You have to be your change. We have to be the change for Victor. Man, that was a little boy. 12 seconds. That was a little boy. No more tragedies. No more tragedies in Pocatello. We need to stand united. We need to stand together. You know, I send all good things out to everyone here fighting for Victor. He's not forgotten. He's not forgotten. There's people who will stand out on the street and they'll talk to the police. They'll show the police that we remember. Change. That's justice for Victor. Change. No more running up and shooting people. If 3 of my guys ran up and shot someone, we'd be charged for murder. We would, straight up. So that's all I'm asking for is change and letting everyone know here that I appreciate you and you have my support. I hope.
Thank you very much. Anyone else that'd like to come up and share their thoughts or stories? Okay.
What about online?
Online, is there anyone?
Maybe.
Okay. So thank you very much. Thank you very much for coming and sharing stories and being in community with one another. And let this be the seed that's planted today so that you can continue to build the connections and the community with one another so that you can be the change that you want to see. Thank you very much.
All right.
Oh, so I just wanted to remind everyone, if you want to do the, if you want to experience the family constellations to get some healing, Kyla will be here starting like at 3 o'clock. So please come back, have some lunch and come back. Don't be afraid. It's a really wonderful healing experience. She's got pamphlets if you can't make it, but want to learn more about it or want to connect with Kyla, please come on up and.
All right. Just a second here. Do-do-do. Do-do-do-do-do-do-do-do-do. Where is it at? Boom, there it is. Okay, so that was the Truth and Reconciliation Conference that was held in Pocatello, Idaho, for Victor Perez. I was so excited to be a part of that. I had no idea that they were going to call me up to make statements or ask questions. So that was also kind of cool. Yeah, that's going to be it. That was a 3-hour long conference. I was live for all of it. If you were here with me through all of it, thank you so much. Until next time, do you, but do it with love and affection. I'm Kyle Fields. Goodbye.
Reset the clock, we're